Good morning. Good morning, all. Good morning. I'd like to leave the meeting open. Thank you all for coming today. I think maybe a few still to get here. There's they haven't had apologies for, so hopefully they turn up in the next little while. So oh, sorry. Do the kitty please.
Whakataka te hou te te uru. Whakataka te hou te te konga. Te mā kina kina te rita. Te mā tara tara te whai. Te ake ana te whakakura. Te teo, te hoka, te hou uru. Hei hei mauri ura.
Thank you. Bit different days. Jordan is sitting over there. Normally he's sitting beside me. Anything that has to happen in the meeting. So it's going to be, meeting might be a bit all over the place at times today with Jordan having to sit over there today. So next thing is apologies. So,
I've got a list written down, so.
and is there any others?
No, I got them today, so just maybe in a second.
They can have a movement and then second for that, please.
Yeah.
Right, we want to someone to say the apologies. Oh,
Okay, we've got a few. I've got some of it. Yeah.
you say.
I've got Caleb Ansell, Ross Thornton, Tony Wade, Neil Gray, Nikki Fisher, Adama Chase, and I think that's, and then we might have a few more. We'll see. No worries. Who's seconding that?
You can move this eight and second, please. Roger. All in favour? Against? Thank you. Welcome to the agenda. Get to it. Colin and Mover, the second. Benjamin. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Any displays of the interest that have changed since the last meeting? Thank you. Move on to the next one. So to confirm the minutes of the the minutes of the thanks.
Ben.
Oh, Roger. Thank you. And Heather, all in favour? Again, oh, sorry.
Mr. Chair, I note that the regional council staff in attendance are recorded in the minutes. Is it appropriate to have the Hauraki District Council staff also recorded in the minutes as attending?
No.
No. Thank you.
Nice. Right, first item.
We go back to that because we need to be against.
Sorry.
Any against? So any against? So Gary, thank you. Any more items? Issues and action.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So just before we'll take the issues and action report is read, and we can take any questions or points for clarification. But just before we commence, Mr. Chairman, just a little housekeeping announcement, if I may.
Yeah.
Just as far as the venue's concerned, for those that haven't been here, the toilets are just out through the doors to the right. Just go down past the main reception that you probably came in, and the toilets are really to the right there. So hot drinks are available throughout the meeting, just that's on the table as well. So please go yourself. And also just from a health and safety perspective, there's lots of cables that are floating around, particularly between the EV screen and Jordan. So just be aware of mind, there's a trip hazards. We are having a few technological the challenges this morning, so when speakers are up, I've asked staff to stand over Jordan a little bit, because that's the only mic in the room for those that are online.
Yeah.
So we just have to speak clearly, and we might have to re-convey any questions for those that are online, just so it's not too much of a nuisance for them. So anyone that's speaking, standing from a staff perspective, will just stand up for our left here. So just as far as like the staff in attendance today, I'm just going to go around the room, and I'll start with Michelle White. Michelle's our Senior Environmental Officer. She's here to present on the Pathways to the Sea report. So thanks, Michelle, for being here today. Karen Watson is our Acting Charity Loan Manager. Karen's going to cover the presentation of the couple of reports today. The author of the report and what we're doing. Good work behind the scenes as well. I appreciate you, Karen, and for the day. Reuben Mills, community, you all know Reuben, main drainage manager. So overseeing the King Valley drainage, working with the local staff here. Been around. It was a very novel job from third pay trip. It's not getting good this morning. And Nicole, she's placing our here, deputy working supervisor. So welcome, Nicole. Thanks to our senior unit lead here for Karakia as well. I've seen the management and drainage with program as well. And a special mention for, I'm going to stand up, because I think this gentleman is that Ian Ramsey is our senior unit lead for land drainage, and has been at WRC for the last 7 years, I think, Ian. Yes. Ian's retiring in a couple of weeks, and so we are going to be farewelling Ian sadly at that time. And I guess from a staff perspective, on behalf of the organisation, Greg can't be here. He's quite at Bali, I think, as we speak. But Ian, just in front of the committee members, and I know we'll share our tributes from a staff perspective in due course, but just wanted to acknowledge your contribution, well, not only to the drainage program, but also to the subcommittee over the years too. Your intel, your knowledge, the way you've been working with landowners, well-being, a lot of complexity, a lot of issues, budgets, making decisions on the fly sometimes. It's been great having you on board. On behalf of the staff, Greg, and I guess Leo as well. Thanks, and also the best for your requirements. Yeah, sure. I think you're right.
Thank you. Just working with the regional council is the last chapter in a long career in civil engineering with consultants and contractors as well. So coming here 6 years ago, I was well mentored with a guy, Ian McLeod, who some of you will remember, and also Karen. She helped me with understanding the budgets and how the system worked, and just getting out there and dealing with the farmers and the contractors. Over the past few years with COVID and a very burgeoning computer system that we've got in the council, so they can start to shine off the job. But I've persevered. I've been getting the pension for a few years now, so it's time for me to do what I want to do. And I'm going to hand over my tasks, my job, and some of my wisdom over to Keith and Nicole. I'm sure they'll do better. Thank you. I've been deeply service.
We have a couple of council staff. Do you want to introduce?
I'm David Plong. I'm the operations engineer team leader at Karakia District Council, so I have responsibility for land drainage, amongst other responsibilities. My colleague.
Hi everyone, I'm Manisha Pillay. I recently joined Hauraki District Council as a Water Services Manager, so covering 4 waters for our district.
Yeah, so I guess Karen is just by way of arrangement. So Karen has kindly stepped into the acting zone manager role to replace Jodie Kosian, who resigned from council. We are very fortunate. For those of you that don't know Karen, I'm sure most of you do. Karen used to do the role quite a few years ago, so it's great to actually have Karen services in here. The way that Karen works across the spectrum, I'm just so relieved to have her field. But we also want to acknowledge Jodie's contribution of service to this committee as well over the years. In drainage, and also to the community. I know she works alongside some of you individually as well, to support some of the challenges. So We know that the zoning manager role is a big role in council. It travels across relationships, stakeholders, iwi, particularly around risk, budgets. So I just want to acknowledge that, these roles are very, very much rich in people that are in roles. We're just waiting for the license review outcomes to see where those roles are helping. We've also got a vacancy at Waikato, in the lower Waikato with Sarah Raymond. Some people that Sarah resigned last week to head down to Taupo, the 3 water managers down there. So a lot of change. Thank you.
Yeah, well, and just to add into that is Karen has asked if members would like to go to the rationalisation opening on Monday at Karakia at Shelley Beach. So she's asking for numbers that would like to be here on Monday for catering. So if you'd like to speak there for a second, Karen.
Yeah, thank you very much. Most of the members, well, hopefully all the members should have had an email invite. We just haven't had everyone reply, so I just wanted today to just ask anyone to confirm with me if you're coming, if you haven't replied. We just want to make sure that we've got sufficient food, etc., for the number of people intending on turning up. We're already at a 70 number. So yeah, if you can just let me know if you're going to come and you haven't already replied, we appreciate that. Thank you.
And we've got some photos of the site, I think, in the presentation shortly. Otherwise, I'll said that we get me back to the issues and action report. The fact that it's read and have to take any questions, otherwise.
Any questions? Okay. Yeah.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
The Democracy Services was going to send out the Nature Positive Carbon Neutral Framework Phase 2, which was all about the peak in the region and the impacts on climate change and 11% of our emissions, etc. I might want to make sure that it's got that. It'll get sent. People have got it. Okay, we'll just hear with the Democracy Services email. So his email's not immediate March.
Dave would have.
Yeah.
Can you find it out?
I will. Yeah, I'll definitely fire that up. Yeah.
Thank
Thank you for raising this, councillor. I just confirm I haven't received a notable check for it last night.
So just to let you know that it's a report that basically shows council's emissions. So the council's own emissions in council are like this. If you add in the bus services, council's emissions go to that. If you add in peat soils, it goes to this. And they're deemed to be 11% of the emissions in the Waikato region. So here in South, in the 2 areas with peat soils. And so there's now a 4-year project being undertaken on this. And so this report goes through it. It suggests it could be mitigated by planting trees. 2,500 hectares a year for 10 years would mitigate that. Otherwise, it starts to impact on the council's obligations because heat is deemed to be council related because our flood protection services are what allow the heat to be utilised. So it's an important issue to be recognised by people who live here.
Yeah. I've been quite a bit recently about how much land New Zealand has taken out and put into free cleared forests or whatever. It's a horrendous amount of area. But all I'm going to say is that if you take it out of productive land, you shouldn't be able to rate it. But then how does the council go forward or rates forward? Because that land's not productive, so why should it be rated? You take out how many hectares, you say?
25,000.
25,000 hectares out of productive land. How does the landowner actually afford to even stay on the land?
The other side of that is that the report is actually talking about re-watering and removing land from production to prevent so the alternative is to plant.
Oh,
Yeah, so it's
I
just
just
a dilemma.
wondering that because
Yeah.
if you go back, I think it was 2009. Waikato Regional Draft Plan came up then, and it stated in that draft policies statement that they wanted 10% of all farms planted in trees. Now, that sounds okay, but on the payout of that day, that took nearly $200 million out of the Waikato economy. So
Nobody's talking about planting trees at the moment. The thing of what we're going through with that P paper at the moment is we're actually assessing the real science of what is going on with that land, because it is the science we've done in the past, is it relevant, or is it, or what is needed to understand what is going on with that land? That's what the idea of that. It's not actually telling us what land use it should be used for. It's mostly saying some land uses will be better than others. We get it. I think we don't need to go down the rabbit hole too quickly with it, but we need to just make everyone understand that this research has been done, and I know that what the emissions that came up yesterday in South Waikato, but I think the emissions on peat actually gets confused with agricultural emissions in it as well. So that's why the number gets so big so quick, because the agriculture emissions is mixed in with the peat stuff that Jennifer presented yesterday, and the number was 61%.
Yeah.
And that number isn't right, I don't think. It's because it's mixed in with the agriculture emissions. So,
I just wanted you to know that there's thinking going on around it.
yeah.
It will pop out in 4 years' time, just before 2030,
Yeah.
which is when we have to meet climate change emission reduction goals from internationally. So it's just to be aware and to start.
And we need to start discussing it in a proactive way. How are we going to manage it?
Stupid. Well, this is such a big topic. We're talking to heritage people, we're talking to Waikato farms. We're talking.
We're talking about 65,000 hectares of productive land in the Waikato. That pays for roads and schools and infrastructure, and we got some of it's high burden because it has got flood protection with it. So it's vital assets it's assets of the whole Waikato. It's not just Hauraki, I think when we say, it's just the Hauraki's got that land, that's unfair to say. This is vital infrastructure that pays for assets throughout the Waikato. Waikato pay a general rate into it, but we also fund, we help, because that asset is factories and working in jobs somewhere else in the Waikato. So we've got to look at it as a whole thing, and I think not to get too donkey deep in it, but there's a lot of water to go under the bridge, and I think all that matters is everyone is aware of what is going on, and that you can have good input into the discussion. That's the most important thing, that you have educational, good, robust discussion about it in the future, and we're going to have it. It's a big topic.
It's too big today to discuss here. We just got.
Well, it's about making sure you got the paper for a start, and then maybe it could be at the next agenda meeting that you actually have a discussion.
Well, maybe it's something to come offline at the next meeting, then we do after the meeting, have a discussion about it.
It's just very quickly, just my case, I've got about 500 to 700 hectares of land going into maize. That's long-term stuff. That's all around the Mudbridge area, so it's just someone they just don't push it. We have a lot of meetings about that, so.
You understand, and that's going to cause more sinkage even faster when it's gone out of cows and gone into maize production. That's not a good thing. I agree. Yeah.
But in terms of this paper, I do recall seeing something along that line, but I don't sort of remember the paper. Just been through the emails, I can't find it, on or about the 20th of the 3rd. Perhaps it went out, but it seems I might be.
A refresh would be good.
I think, have we already talked about sending that again?
Yeah.
I think that would be pretty useful. And just an observation, this very complaint, but an observation is the reality is if we're meeting every 6 months, actually practically quite difficult to keep it in mind, whatever.
I actually, there's something I was going to discuss today that at the end of the meeting, Colin, good point, that maybe you actually put a motion forward that you think that the meeting should be quarterly. and even if it's just a Zoom meeting, at least you're getting informed, you're getting information sent back to you that's not every, that it's at the moment, it's every 4 months, that it's, at least it's every 3, but you're keeping it relevant to the time, the information. Like at the moment, we're sort of, I know how you're feeling, that we're a bit disconnected because of the time. And things that are an issue at the time, by the time we get to a meeting, they're most probably not an issue anymore, that you've lost the value of that time. And I think that's a good point, Colin, you brought up. I think that's maybe, I was thinking about that this morning, maybe it's something we could discuss today for a motion, or an action that goes back to council saying we would really like these to be forwarded.
Well, I think it would be useful to discuss the issue.
Yeah.
Because it is, practical together.
Yeah.
And I think the innovation maybe it doesn't have to say, doesn't need to be a formal meeting like this, perhaps. Yeah. And it's an update. Yeah. Perhaps with an opportunity for some discussion.
Yeah, because it's even hard to keep the membership when the meetings are so far apart. Because people lose an interest every 6 months.
It doesn't really, it's not conducive of genuine engagement.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Totally agree. Yes. Thank you for that, Ronald. I think that's really valuable. Take back to staff in Hamilton.
Can I just say, we can't make it a motion, but I can write it down as an action to go to ICMC.
But it's not even for this training.
No.
It's training.
Right, okay, all right.
That's what I'm saying for future subcommittees. This is a thing we'd like to put forward.
All right.
Robbie, are you suggesting we actually discuss that now or is there another opportunity?
Well,
Access on the side of administrative actions, sort of.
we can put it on there now.
Yeah, I'll put it on.
Okay.
I'll write an action down, not a motion.
I'd be interested in what's.
Okay.
Yeah, all right.
The other members, what do you think about that?
Absolutely agree. 6 months is just too long. You forget 3 months, fair enough.
Yeah.
Was there not a reason why we moved to this? You should know that there would be reasons why we moved to 2 a year. Because if I remember correctly, back at last training, when we before, we had more than 2 years a year.
That's meant to be free at the moment. It's just the way things have fallen with LPP and everything else this year, that everything's got, we had the early one in March to fit in.
That's right.
And the LPP, and then everything else has been preloaded after that.
I'm not against it, I just want to make us remember. Yes, as council.
Yeah, I know.
Reason of why we were there and to revisit that, and despite the fact that the council chamber. And you know what's going to come into all of that is the costing of all of us over here, the staff, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
if you look at, say, online ones that won't cost any money to travel, then why not just add that as a recommendation?
Yeah. Then maybe one's an online or a non-formal meeting.
I don't know, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
If you want to get more than 2 a year.
Yeah.
Robbie,
Yeah.
I think it's also really important, it's Conal pointed, what Conal pointed out, is the fact that 6 monthly isn't a community engagement.
No.
That's right.
And it's part of what this community is about.
Robert.
When things come and go fast, and like I think Adam said, was relevant, but it's not by the time we leave for a meeting.
That's right.
Noel wants to have he's online.
Noel, would you like to say something?
Yeah, you will recall how difficult it was to get these committees re-established and the reluctance through democracy with the amount of time and so on. So it was a major win to actually get these committees in the first place, and secondly, to get a schedule of meetings. I think from the feedback that both you and I have had in the Waikato and the Hauraki team, that the benefit, and both from the landowners and from staff, and certainly from Greg Ryan, the director, the benefit of these committees has actually been recognised in the short time they are in place. So I think you and I need to be talking to Greg, and there's no reason why we couldn't schedule an extra committee meeting next year. It all depends on the timing, etc. You know, whether it meets budgets, whether it, work programs and the like. So I think the point's well made by members of the committee, but you and I have to do a lot of lobbying with some of our colleagues who are yet to come over.
and not, oh, thanks for that, Noel, that's really, enlightening, and that, I think the other thing in there is maybe, and I'm just talking out loud here, the commit, there's so much similarities of what we're talking about some of the time that maybe that could be one meeting of you actually meeting the rest of the membership of both committees and having it as one. Because there is so many similarities we talk about in these meetings that half the meeting is actually the same stuff. The
Yeah, well, if you look at,
Yeah.
if you look at the peat issue and all those sorts of things, that's commonality between both, yes.
Yeah, so I think maybe that's a point that if we did have an extra meeting a year, that there could be a meeting of both committees together, which would be a good thing, I think, that you get to meet other members and in a similar situation. It's a good thing that when you have that discussion, you have alignment of what you want out of everyone, out of the whole, of both committees. So thanks for that, Noel. That was a really good point. Thank you. So you got something you can put down around it?
Yeah.
Where you want to read that out so everyone's happy with it?
Yeah. The Hauraki scheme subcommittee recommends to ICMC that they would like another meeting date next year? Additional, yeah, next year.
Even if it's a combined meeting with
Okay, with Waikato scheme. Okay, yeah.
It should be per annum, so that it's
Per
an
annum.
ongoing and enduring issue, not just for
Okay.
next year.
Okay, yeah.
Please go back to our QR and rechanging it, and advocate. So that's all for Judy to take into place. That's it. It needs to be changed to the PR or wait.
Yeah. So is anything else in general?
Yeah, move us again.
That's it. Brian, thank you. All in favour? Against? Gary, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, this is one of our key reports, presenting to the committee this morning. The sort of recap that we saw last financial year.
Presentation.
23-24. And I'm going to, make this over to Karen,
Hauraki scheme.
give highlights and also group and cover some of the ranges. Getting question there we go.
I think so.
Karen, on.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
It's just
thank you.
Just loading.
Oh, it's just loading. We'll be there with you in a moment. Oh, no. I think if you click the enable external content for the session.
On that screen. It's not coming up on my screen.
Is that a touch screen?
Might be. Give it a go. I stop
What's happened is that when you present
sharing.
other,
I'll stop sharing the screen. Yeah. There we go.
I'm sure you want to see the pictures.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I'd like to know what that's because the one in council, we got told the other day, because we were allowed to put in the car from the other was coming out there.
maybe move it across to the other screen.
Does that belong to
I
you?
think that's what's happened.
That's
But then-
that's
Yeah. I'll get rid of it.
no, that is the backup.
Just look again.
Why is it not going away?
I think we normally can, but for some reason, part of the system.
That's, when you move that one across, it won't let me do, it won't let you know.
it's
Can't
lagging.
even minimize it.
No, it's lagging. Right.
That's what you need to do is present it on the screen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I could just, because it's HD, I can just leave it on here.
Yeah.
And then, there I can click through normal. It should have been fine.
You're going to go over to Gordon and speak over
go in
there.
the content.
The sound statements there.
No, it won't let me touch up
Oh, you
here.
touch it.
Oh, God.
So we just feel sorry for people that use for heritage. Trying to get the system up and running.
If I do that, nah.
Why you didn't do this?
It's just, you gotta get rid of that somehow.
Yeah, I know. One.
We think it's tomorrow.
We can if you, yeah.
You've got yours.
And I can just flick through it.
I'll
You got it on
bring
the
it over.
USB.
Bring it over. Watch surface over.
Yeah, do you have it like?
Just take
download?
5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sweet. And I can just plug it straight in.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's yeah, it's fine. It was working fine. It wants to, but okay, here we go. Where's your type? Cool. Then I'll just look through for you. You got your loaded.
I'm taking mine. I've got it on the, I always save mine onto the desktop.
Hold on, we might be away here. Oh, yeah.
It's my surface, so you're seeing.
Yeah, on there, but I've got mine sorted. So I can probably do this now. I'm all good to go.
You right?
Yeah, I can do it. And then I'll
You need
get rid of that.
to-
Hold on. Hang on. I'll just let it load. And then, no, okay on that. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, down like right. Yeah, he's right now. Cool.
You right?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Yes, it is. Yes, it's a bit. Right. Be away.
Let's go on now.
Here, guys. Come on. And then right to.
Hopefully the build up is.
Get rid of that. You drag it across this over here. No. And then, oh yeah, and then there we go. And then oh, there we go. We're good. All right, we're away. See your screen. Cool. Yeah. So tell me where.
Next one. Next one.
Pictures.
Yeah.
Okay, we're good. All right, we're away.
Okay, thank you very much for your patience.
You don't get money already.
Is there any chance that
What
I
I'm
can
going
see
to
it?
work our way through is that this is the first few slides are around our operational program of work for the year. Waihao and Piako zones, then we'll move into capital for the Waihao, capital for the Piako, talk a little bit about this current year's program. And all the way through, we have a number of slides with photographs. So let's go. So our operational program of work last year was mainly about recovery. Recovery for the 2000, Cyclone Gabriel and every other event, Cyclone Hale, etc., that came through. So our team were pushed quite hard and very thankful for the funding and application process that we were able to achieve through Crown Infrastructure Partners. So they cast that program, and you probably heard the acronym, the NIWI acronym, North Island Weather Events. We were able to apply for and gained $940,000 from that funding opportunity to offset the additional work that we had to do. So you can see in the Waihao column there how we're way above the budget that was offset by that funding. Slightly above in the Piako, but ultimately that was, just a little bit of the additional work needed. So from a position of the additional work that we had to do for recovery, that was our big push for the last financial year. The expectation is going forward now that any remaining work falls into our BAU program. There's no further funding from other parties to help us with that, so we have to kind of prioritise and right-size the work going forward. Okay, next slide, please.
Sorry, Karen, just before you move on, just for clarification, maybe he didn't come through in the papers, but the solid lines and the shaded line, the solid.
Yes, solid. So the darker colour is the actuals. The lighter colour is the budget, forecast budget we had at the end of the financial year. Sorry, nice reminder. These represent the end of June 2024's financial results. I do have a couple of slides on the next year's program coming up. Okay. Oh yeah, a big year. A lot of money spent, a lot of work done. Any further questions on that slide?
You did well to get the 940,000 from the government.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, an appendice in your report today actually has the final report back to CIP on that program. So if you wanted to know more, that's in the document.
And I'd say that the Waihao Valley and the Coromandel do very well out of that.
Yes. Absolutely.
Especially, they got several extra doses of it.
Yes, in particular, yeah.
But just to acknowledge, there's a lot of work to get money out of government. They don't just hand it out because you ask for it. You've got to do all the stats and all the reports and all that. Yeah.
Yes, agreed. Doesn't matter whether we're talking about the flood response recovery, whether we're talking about the opportunities through shovel ready or the common type terminology for tranche 2 being before the deluge, all of that comes with expectations from the ministries. So hence we have to gear up in that administrative reporting collection of data space. But ultimately it's a small proportion of the cash we ultimately get.
The funding window of opportunity is very small as well. They'll say it's there and it's there for 2 or 3 weeks and you've got to have your funding model in that time. So staff have to go, we have to leave, have to move staff from certain projects and get that one done, otherwise the opportunity's gone. We don't actually, so I think that's you have to move staff around quite a bit. Karen, to make that opportunity happen as well.
We have to, through the structure of council, we have to recognise the opportunity first. We have to decide whether we're going to go. And if we go, we have to go properly. Yeah. Otherwise we stress people out and that's not appropriate either.
On the recovery from on the White House side, the work that they've done up the Carol, at the top end of Carol.
Got some photos there.
Yeah, they're really outstanding, but I'd like to say that that flood actually undermined the road at the bottom of the Carol, so that's something that needs to be taken into account because there's the tar seals hanging over the edge of the river.
Ruben, can I get you to note that down, please? Question mark about the road at the bottom of the Carol.
On the both on the outside of the bend, so that's where the loose water is. So, which is the Carol? Carol is the river coming into Kings.
Yeah, right.
So it's just as you go, Mamahari. Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Oh, any further questions or we move on? Next slide, please. The Purun River, Neesville Road as an example of the work we've just been talking about. Large blockages. Expectation that staff work with contractors to resolve. You note that there's, even recent, I've got a photo coming up shortly of recent, earlier this week, trees falling across the Ohinimuri, bank to bank. That sort of stuff happens all the time and it's not planned. Hence, we have to gear up to deal with them. Okay, next slide, please. Further work, so this is the Hikataya River, significant erosion and damage, as you can see in the top right-hand corner and on the left. So these are small, individual examples of what was happening across that whole Waihau Valley scheme. So in the bottom right, we have, the result was the definitive answer was moving a portion of the stop bank, actually undertaking the erosion control for the betterment of the catchment. So it's not always a like for like fix. It's a stop, make common sense decisions about what's best going forward for us and our schemes.
And just in terms of like that bottom right hand corner, what were the implications in terms of seeking legal consent, things like that? Or because of an emergency, could the team just go ahead and do it?
Yes, we can, as long as we give the correct notifications. In this particular one, I don't think we needed any particular notifications. It was agreed on site what was needed to be done.
It's heartening to hear that practical actions can be taken.
In all those situations, though, Karen, are you responsible to put in a resource consent retrospectively?
No.
You're not?
No.
So that's good.
Not if it's not required. If our notifications come back and state that it will be required, then of course we will. Right. But not if we're not. Oh, next one, please. Karakia stream. So this damage to the lower reaction of the stream was, so at least we have pre-work, post. Sorry, it's not the clearest of photos on the right, but that was a significant piece of work that was needed to be done to save the ongoing erosion that was happening. And for your information, if you're Yeah, we're also upgrading the stop banks in this area as a totally separate project. Was already on our capital program piece of work anyway.
The train comes out just south of Kobu.
Yes, so another, yeah.
And that's all above the golf course.
Yeah, so we're upgrading between State Highway 26, so the road by the golf course down to meet the Waihao River. So as the guys always say to me, never a dull day for the team. So here's some examples of some of the other operational work that happens on pretty much a daily basis. Removing debris from floodgates using the pump boat. And on the right, one example of where we had requested by the harbour master to remove a yacht that had sunk in the entrance to the Makura Canal. So we did the work, we've passed on the costs, as in we get funded for those costs back. We just did the work for them. So yeah, guys do quite a range of tasks. Next one, please. This is the unplanned piece of work that happened on Monday, as in the tree fell on Monday. Yesterday they were pulling it out. I was really surprised that there weren't kids there already trying to cross from bank to bank. But I think maybe because it landed in the water on Monday, we saved that.
This was this week, not last week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, so standard piece of work for the team. Yeah, next one, please. Yeah, so another large piece of operational work that we're doing is always the modelling of our schemes. So recognising that modelling needs to take place on a regular basis to confirm our levels of service and also to confirm what works need to be undertaken. So we can confirm that our modelling is complete and the technical reports are being written at the moment. Of course, they get reviewed multiple times. We end up doing peer reviews, etc. But once that's ready and we understand what we think the next lot of work is that comes out of those, we'll actually bring this and present to this committee what that means. Okay, so it won't just be a paper desktop assessment. We'll come and we'll have a talk about it and we'll decide, you know, how we undertake that work. These are examples straight out of the model, to be honest. Okay, that's a large piece of operational work that we do every 25 and 10 years on each scheme.
Sorry, Karen, could you speak to what's the modelling, what the purpose of the modelling?
To recognise the inputs to a scheme. So what's their rainfall been telling us for the last 10, 20 years, maybe even longer. Those large events, what is that doing to our systems? What does our survey data tell us about our condition of our stop banks in particular? Where will we need to do work? Ultimately, it looks for opportunities for change. And if there is anything, the modelling should tell us what to do there.
So just carrying on, is this like a new project each time, or is this updating previous work?
It's a new project, but we take the model and we update the model. So we don't build a new model from scratch. So we take our learnings that we've got and we just update all the inputs, all the recognition of work that's been done, changes that have been made previously in recognition of our climatic inputs.
So something like a stop bank that's scheduled that will be expected that will need to be topped up or reviewed in 2027.
Yeah.
This would just give some foundational information to either agree that yes, that's probably right, or actually no, that can wait, or it needs to happen.
Yeah. So
Next year.
Lisa can probably talk a bit more about this in the future, but ultimately that's one reason to come and do a presentation so you fully understand the process that we go through and what the outcomes mean and why they're important. But ultimately our end result is that we then have an understanding of what's in our asset database and what our program of work out of that means. Whether it's a huge piece of work or whether it's a nice.
Are you going to seek, when you do that technical report, the some of the Western Drainage Board and just to get some local information from them the people on the land, or we're just going to be just on model that's sitting outside, not taking any of what's actually being done?
It's a good question how that happens. I know there's a lot of input that goes into the model. I'm not sure whether it comes down to the level of local landowners. No.
Yeah.
But
Brian's made a good point. He made, so the drainage, the western and eastern drainage at their, how the effect of what they're seeing is that taking into the model. That's what.
That's all us.
I might ask Lisa Drysdale, who's here, she's the team leader for asset management, to clarify.
So,
Just come up, sorry, I'm asking you the question to the microphone. Go.
Okay. So the specific landowners, I can't tell you exactly who has been asked on how it's going or not. This project's been ongoing for about 3 years as they've been doing the modelling. What we do say is the scheme unit leads, the work supervisors and their teams who are working with you, we ask them what is happening on the ground. So because they're the ones who are in those weekly conversations with you on what's working and what's not working. And we use them because we have easy access to them when we're building these models.
Just make it weird. There's two subcommittees that you can use that have a lot of information and wealth of time now group to give you some.
The fact that we're going to bring it back and talk about it, it won't be adopted until this committee sees it.
Brian, Aaron or Kenny will be on this. That's the discussion you have here. That's the relationship that you and Kenny and Karen and your committees, sorry, I can say that, your committees and Karen and Kenny need to have that discussion there of that you're having their input there.
That's what's making sure you.
No, that's good. Thank you very much. All input's good input. Thank you. Next slide.
Relevant, any others that in that you should bring them to that meeting to have that discussion at that time.
Thank you. Okay, so that's kind of a general overview of our operational program for the year. I'm going to talk now to the slides on the capital work program. We have the two separate zones, for the one for the Waihao, one for the Piako. So I've separated the information out so we can talk a little bit more in detail to that. So this is on page 18 of your agenda. We have a table that talks to what our end of year actuals and forecast budget and the variance of that was for our capital program. That's broken into what we class as our standard capital renewal. So we've got an asset, we're renewing it, those sorts of costs. We've identified any new work. So that's where we don't have an asset, but we're either buying one or building one as we're going along. So in this case for the Waihao, we had to purchase land for the Karakia Stream Stop Bank Upgrade Project. So that piece of work was completed. Just in the last, must have been by May or June. And then we had what we've separated out what was the shovel ready program for the Waihao, because it had all the external funding from the Ministry for Business. So it was just good to have a look at how that program was running. Separate. So in the Waihao in particular, that was the section of the foreshore stop bank upgrades. We had the large, in prior years, the large Mill Road stop bank upgrade, Roger Harris upgrade. Ooh, what else do we have anymore? Sorry?
Yes, responding.
That's in Piako. Yeah. Look up.
And just on the shovel ready part here, the fast forward is moving the silt from the silt tracks on the outside, which that is trying to dry, take them away.
Yeah.
From the Kobu Bridge around to the start to past the
corner.
To the corner, you know where I mean. That part of the stop bank is probably the worst I've seen it in the last 30 years.
Okay.
The contractor had, you would never mow it, you'd flip a tractor on it. And it's just to me, it's just appalling that it's got to that state.
Okay.
And they had heavy traffic doing a circuit going down the Ronga Road around the stop bank. And those heavy tractors and trailers are like 25, 30 tonne. And that bank's taken quite a pounding in places, and I'm quite concerned for the state it's in
Get
now.
that looked at. Well, got, yeah, I know what you're talking.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And also the plantings they all did along that part of that, which was on the internal drain. I think that was a complete waste of money because it's virtually nothing but a survive.
Yeah, there
It's
was.
not been maintained, or well, if it has survived, you can't see it, it's just overgrown like that.
Yeah, there were some issues with that particular planting plan in that location. But I'll note that down as well.
Just
have a look
for
at it.
me as a ratepayer, it's a big cost. And it doesn't matter where that money comes from, it's come from somewhere in our pocket.
Yeah.
And we haven't got a result from it.
Yeah, I'll get them to have a look at that. That was a Ministry for the Environment project.
But it still comes out of our pocket.
Yeah, ultimately, as a ratepayer, we pay for it all, don't we? It's great.
Nothing's free.
No,
But
nothing.
there was a small contribution that the scheme was doing to for the alignments of the drains and taking edges off so they could do those. So we contributed that way
Oh,
as a scheme as well, you know.
And when they went along with the digger and moved that edge, they flipped it to the edge of the stop there. So there's quite all the way along the stop there, never level there. So there's no way you can do anything with it. And then when they have bailed it for that, when they bailed it and dropped the bloody bales on the board drain, that doesn't help.
No, that certainly is not good management, is it?
But it's another
I'll
cost.
get that picked out.
To remove those bales.
I'll get that followed up. Thank you. Okay, so overall, for the Waihau capital work, no matter how we funded it, was kind of 85% of the entire budget spent. The remaining budget is a carry forward that we had for a project that was committed, which we have committed now for a technical scoping of the Cox floodgate, which is in the vicinity you're talking about, Roger. So that was actually a good result from a financial perspective for that capital program. A lot of work. And yeah.
So just on that scoping of the Cox's floodgate, is that done internally or externally?
Internally. We've got an internal project manager. Of course, they'll go external for things that we don't do, like guarantee, blah, blah, blah.
My big concern is like the new asset into Campbell Road, with the contract, with the consultant and contractors, it's not all done internally, so we're losing that knowledge. So if there's a cock up here, they need to prove it, come along, do it, are relearning. We're not keeping that information. We're actually paying someone to take that information away. If you look at it from that expense, we need to keep all this information right. It used to be when they started it. So maybe it's time we bring that we're scheme or something, because there's a lot of assets that are coming up in the next 20 years that need doing. I think we've got to really concentrate on keeping as much of that information in-house.
I think, Roger, that's a discussion that you have after the meeting with the consultants that are doing the ICM review. That's the sort of discussion they want to get here. But to Karen right now, she understands what you said, but it's not in the LTP. There's nothing she can do about it. She can hear you say it, and that's as far as it can go. But the consultants after the meeting is where you have that discussion because they want to hear that sort of information. So I just want to make it, if you want to go into that sort of discussion again, that's the discussion you need to have at the end of the meeting with the two ladies that are doing the ICM review. They want to hear that you want to have your own people managing your assets and not consultants. That's the sort of discussion, because there is, in the future, there's going to be a cost for that. And then if you look at it as a council, it may actually cost more for us to have our own people running those assets than bringing in consultants. So we have to be happy as ratepayers to say, yes, we have to pay for that because we want that knowledge to stay within our organisation. So that's a discussion, as I said, we're going to have in 2 hours' time. And I'll welcome you to discuss it there, but having Karen with it right now isn't going to change it. That's all I'm going to say.
It's a very good point. Very good point. Thank you very much. Can we go to the next slide?
Oh, yeah, just can we just go back to that previous slide? Yeah, great, the work that's happened, but just in terms of that Waihau renewals, 67% of budget spent, does that mean that all the work was done at 2/3 of the cost rather than the full cost, which is fantastic, would that happen? Or does that mean that a third or more of the work didn't happen, and if it didn't, will it happen?
I can say that just about all the work happened. Some of it was slowed down because of the fact that so much effort was being put into the operational program. But what was prioritised was completed. Yes, that would cost less because, you know, there were a few things that didn't happen. So we've moved those into this current year's program. So they're not lost. They don't just disappear. They just get moved and deferred slightly in time.
There was some prioritisation
Yes,
and some pushing back.
Yeah. exactly.
I'm just there, I'm not quite sure here, but I know in the lower Waikato, most big projects last year came under budget.
Mm. Well-
Quite a bit, so it was quite a bit of savings in a couple of big projects.
Mm.
It's really encouraging to get, and that's different to the news we've had in previous. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it seems to be significant.
So becoming a little bit mature in how we manage contingency. So recognising at the start of a project, we hold up probably a larger contingency of funds against the unknowns, whether they be in-ground unknowns or market influences unknowns is really important. But as the project progresses, we can release some of that contingency as those risks are being known. But of course, during timing of the year and the council's opportunity to adjust your budgets, you might end up still with a slightly higher budget in March and your project doesn't finish till June. So you may have those sort of minor swings, but ultimately what we can say is we did the work, and yes, probably some more of the storytelling could be more clarified in that space. How come we're only 67% spent? Yeah.
Can I just
Take
ask
that on.
you, is it also because you had to deal with flood protection work and the extra work that required
Yeah.
there?
So we
Attention.
yes, we've got the same people, we've got the same staff doing this and operational. So we have to prioritise. We can't clone them and have two of everybody. That would be nice. But we have to prioritise where they're working. And yes, we pushed hard in that operational space this year. We needed to.
I'd say well, Karen's understating that some staff that are management actually in the gears a lot when all this is going on, doing a lot more than what they need to be to make sure that this is all being accomplished at all at one time.
Safely.
Safely. Yeah.
Thank you, Jordan. So here's an example. This is the foreshore. This was photograph taken just before we closed the site down, probably about the end of April this year. So therefore you don't see any erosion sediment control in the photo, but it was done. Yes, we have still got a few kilometres to do at the end of this summer. We've worked with the contractor and we're not going to restart that project until January or very early January, so that we can get out of kind of having wet beginnings of summer space, November, December, so we can start in January and complete it. Next photo, please. An example of some of the work that our own teams do without the consultants in the space. So here's Robinson's floodgate refacing. So literally guys in the mud doing the concrete work, replacing the structure for where the floodgate physically hangs from. So sort of stuff the guys really love. Next one, please.
And these are jobs that our own staff.
Yes.
Yeah. So these are jobs that, while I understand that we're doing 50% cheaper than getting a contractor to do them most of the time.
Yeah. So we need somebody to pull together the structure around what the project is, give us a good idea of the scope of the piece of work, and then we literally work supervisors take it on and get the doing done.
So that's exactly what you're asking, Roger, and that's what they're doing. So it is happening out there.
It is, when we've got enough time to do them. Next one, please. An example of working with others was the fact of the excess rock that came down at that Komata Hill slip, was working with others to use that rock to turn it into a type of access or type of material we could use then on access tracks. Okay, so thanks to all involved in that. Really good idea. Next one, please. So this is the Piako zone. So again, on agenda page 18, we've got the table for the Piako capital. We didn't have any new work, so nothing new being built in the Piako. So we're just renewing and we're doing the shovel ready project. So this is where the asset rationalisation project comes in. So we're recognising a catchment's benefits, decommissioning 3 assets down to 1 new one. So this is predominantly what's in this row here, 5,291,000 spent. That would have all been spent other than the fact that we've had a bit of slippage into this new financial year. So that's in a photo shortly. And the renewals, yep, 75% again, similar to the other. We needed people to maintain the operational program and didn't do everything on our list in the renewals. We done.
So, sorry, Aaron. On this shovel ready, on the new asset. So it's, I'm under the understanding that Carroll's factory and Campbell's is going to be closed down.
Next slide. I think I got a photo of that on the next slide.
Yep.
Yep, here you go.
Okay, so that's the new asset.
Yeah.
So the 3 floodgates it's replacing, could I please ask that they stay, even if they're sorted up there until the actual new asset's been trialled? Because I don't think that we've had enough rain to actually test it. And I'd be really concerned if it was tested and it wasn't performing to where it was, where the cost of just an asset sitting there and only having to open it if necessary is quite minimal for going forward. I mean, I've talked to the consultant, he says, yeah, no, it's definitely been tested, but I've lived there for 48 years and we had a very dry winter.
Yeah, understand. I understand what you're saying. Problem being is that we have already working with their decommissioning of 2 of the assets, so our Carroll's and factory. Campbell's isn't been decommissioned yet. So we are looking to, so we're balancing a few balls in the air around decommissioning because we're affecting others.
Through that, when we did have a rain spell, factory was running as well. So
But we did test, when we had the soft opening, we did have the gates shut, the other gates shut.
That's right.
So
But
we
then they
do
were-
know that the network was working.
Really, you know, you've got a system that hasn't been fully tested properly to make sure it's going to work and take away the spare tyre. Wouldn't you be better to leave that there for another year and get through the summer, get through a decent weather event, then look at it?
It challenges that the reason we're doing this, or the reason we did this project is that those assets are failing or about ready to fail. The last thing we want is for them to fail now because we haven't closed them. So we are going to close factory and Carroll's. Campbell's will sit and wait for a wee while. Yeah.
That probably would. Okay.
Yeah. So we will have redundancy in the system.
I think the Campbell's leaving that there for now because it's the lowest floodgate.
Yes.
Because the issue would be that the landowner at the bottom, if there is some form of mechanism that's not working correctly, at least the landowner at the bottom has still got another drainage out there. That is, I think that's vital that Campbell stay for a little while till this, everyone feels safe and it's showing that it's working 100% correctly. And then, well, and we actually need Campbell shut off, the sluice gate closed and let this thing work and see what it's capable of.
That's our staged approach. Our staged approach is we close factory and a Carroll permanently.
Yeah.
We close the sluice gates on Campbell's and let the system behave because we need her to function properly without having another gate taking the top off or something.
Yeah.
And then, we come back and we review. Well, we'll be reviewing all the way through.
So through the chair, if you do that, this is looking at the square. If you do that, that's cost of 2 things. Who's funding the cost to allow that to happen? I mean, one of the main things about these meetings is around ensuring things don't happen and the cost.
No.
So Robbie, where does the cost come if you've got 2 areas open to service what the new one is doing?
I always understood what we're talking about right now was always going to be, because the asset of Campbell's is still viable, but the other 2 assets aren't. That's why they want to shut them down and destroy and pull them down and get rid of them because the life is gone. And as I said, they're scared, well, we're liable if these assets fail and then there's an event that these farms go underwater. So we have to get rid of, well, I shouldn't be talking on behalf of you guys, but what I understand is these assets have to go.
Yeah, but the other one we talked.
And the other one still has a lifespan left to it. So let's just leave it there for the next 6 months or 12 months and it's all working correctly. Because we're only shutting the gate, we're not actually using the asset. If we split the floodgate, it's actually just a block hole.
Yeah, because the whole idea of my question is to ensure that we understand that by doing this.
Yeah.
The cost factor is not going to be so escalated.
There should be no cost in the sluice gate until we actually pull the asset out of the ground. There will be a cost of at that time. So is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look, you're shutting the door.
It's important that it's brought to the fore, because one thing you don't want to do is come back to 3 meetings time and go, well, it cost us this much to keep that open and we didn't really need it, but, and then these people are going to say, well, I don't really see you better front that up. But we want to close it down. But, so I'm just making sure that we're all on the same page around.
And you're totally right, Carolina, but this asset is designed totally different than anything else we've built in the scheme before. Right, it's a wall gate and the Piako scheme makes wall gates. That's the blooming, I'm not going to argue about this thing, but it's got the biodiversity bit on the side where we're going to put water back into the wetland and stuff like that, but it hasn't got seeds in it, mangrove seeds, and so there's a lot of working things to this project, and the shape of the drain that there's it's holding water to go into the gate, that it's a totally different system than what we've built in the past. So if it worked, well, I hope this works, because this will be used in other areas around the scheme that we don't have to pump. We can actually store water and let it out between tides even more. So this mechanism is actually really important to keep the cost structure down and the whole of the Hauraki catchment. It's vital. I think there's pros and cons, but this is a vital piece of infrastructure that has to work, because it will lower the running costs of all the Hauraki and whale schemes, and that's really important for you.
That's all good.
Yeah.
And we,
No, I don't want to blur out too much, but that is really the line of our flood protection assets. It's a real big one, and I hope it works and it's successful as hell, because we need it to be, because we need to do more of these in the future. That's the.
And it's a good tip-off, but I am not debating the infrastructure. I am making sure that while you're testing your new one, which I think that it should have been at least pre-tested before it got installed, that the old one that stays in place is not going to cost us more dollars by having two things running.
No.
That's all the question.
It is, and you're right, Kat, that this has been tested with, it's been scoped, and the landowners are just scared, they're worried that it hasn't been through a weather event. So one is practical and one is engineering design, and we're just hoping they both align. Yeah. Integration.
so, yeah, and just a reminder that the Ministry for Business funded this in the shovel ready program. So significant amount of cash from them, so 2.6 million in cash from external parties. We got 250,000 from the Lotteries Commission, and they supported signage and the bird hide and more of the environmental stuff. But the remainder of the money is the physical infrastructure, stop banks, culverts, extension of drainage network, and the inlet and the floodgate. So yeah, so again, this is the project and site that the opening is on Monday. So if you are wishing to come and you haven't email back to let us know, please let me know today. Cool. Next one, please.
Kira, does it meet, one thing with that is the rationalisation there, does it meet the region's water storage ideas, because having that capacity, does it meet some of those as well? That's it doesn't meet another box of that. Our strategic, what is it? Our strategic water storage for the Waikato region or something like that. Does that sort of stuff?
We haven't tested it directly against that, but I'm guessing it will, in the sense that it's drainage, so it's surface water that it's holding.
Yeah.
The design being the big U shape, so a part of it back to there. is there to allow sediment to drop so the water can sit there. It also enables with the depth and the size of it to manage droughts for fish life, etc. in the waterways, and therefore it's also got the large capacity of inlet so that when the gates do open, and hence 4 barrels open, it goes hard and fast.
Yeah, I agree. It would be just interesting if we've actually put it in to see if it meets those boxes and
Yeah.
other departments and councils. So,
Can you know, we
that's
we
just
can check in on that?
thing.
This is not about water storage though, is it?
No, but
No,
that-
but
that-
we-
it is sort of because we're storing water to desilt it and that before it goes out the nutrient loss
So
before it goes out the gate as
quality,
well.
we accidentally created a water quality pond. It's
Yeah.
probably the way I would describe it. We didn't intentionally go into
I
that
take
space.
the word accidentally.
We didn't intentionally engineer it, but it's become a value that wasn't.
No, I've gone off scope, and maybe that's something that we should be looking into
Yeah.
at some stage.
Yeah, but we don't want to spend money on it just to.
No,
Let's let her go. We'll find out.
It's other boxes are within council.
So wonderful. And this is just, if you do turn up tomorrow, Monday, sorry, not tomorrow. We have a handout and this is one of the images on the handout. So it just helps people to understand what the things are that we talk about in the handout, the things that we've done. It may be a little bit invisible if you're unsure of what the engineering was about. Cool. Next slide, please.
Answers for questions like, come up.
We jumped pretty quickly.
Oh, you want to go back?
No, the previous one regarding reservoir fund,
Was it?
previous one, yeah. That 344, is that the upgrade to the?
Oh, sorry, yes. Sorry, so our carryover for the Piarco Capital Total Program, the only major thing we could carry forward of our unspent funds was the fact that we committed to an electrical and telemetry upgrade for the reservoir pump station. So because we've committed to doing that, and it takes time to build these things and, get the specs right, we're able to carry forward that amount. So that's just it's not the motor, that's not the guns, that's not the extra stuff. Okay, so in the Piarco, so the Waikaka South Pump Station, inlet modifications happened during the year. These aren't kind of totally completed photographs, but they're kind of work in progress from beginning to kind of midway through. Again, a lot of staff involved in that, working with some local contractors. Next one, please. Okay, so I haven't got any other photographs of the Piarco, but this is just a wee heads up slide about our current year's program. So we've talked about the 23-24 year, 24-25. We've got all these categories of work to be undertaken. In the very top row in the agenda page, you'll find it. That tells you the total budget we're working towards, and it describes in each category the type of things that we're doing. And so a normal phased process in that program approach of work is that in the first few months of the year, we're reconfirming what our program is. We're reconfirming the stages and scopes of those projects. And we're moving forward after kind of that first 3 months of the year and we get into actual doing. So hence you don't see a great deal of cost in the first 3 months of the year. There's a lot of activity in-house. And then we get going. We release things to the market. We release staff to go and get done. Yes, of course, they need the dry weather to do that as well. So that's how we operate our program. So across the 2 zones, we've got what, 8.5 million to spend this year.
Karen, the generators that you're talking about previously for the Waikato thing, they're the ones that we've had trouble getting parts for in the last 2 years of
so there's a lot
of things playing up, and then we can't get parts for them anymore. We've had to get foreign steel to keep them running.
Yeah, that's right. We've had to do a little bit of, get some specialist engineering, electrical engineering support to make sure that we can maintain our level of service. Because of course you've got to remember where we have generators, they're there because we've got high levels of service in urban areas. So we cannot not maintain that level of service. We can't let Ngatea go under the ground, underwater. We can't let Pyro go underwater. So we need to do what we can. So there is a major project in-house right now to determine what we need to do about the generators. Yeah, that'll be a big decision coming in the next few months.
Karen, just on that, like in the papers, it talks about a generator review of the options available to defend the best generator solution with a replacement generator. Is that one specific generator? Or is that the generators in general?
Generators in general. We've got 5 locations. I think it's 5 generators, 4 sites. Yeah, so we need to, well, my philosophy is at the moment that we need to look long term. So if we've got the money to fix our current solution by purchase, we don't just do we don't do a replacement right now. We look at what we need to do with all of them. We don't want orphans all over the place. We want to have a good, solid program of recognition of purchase and have like for like everywhere.
And we need to have it that we have a service provider that's going to give us service for 20 or 30 years to keep them running.
Exactly. We want a maintenance program with them. It's not a skill we need in-house, but it's a management skill we need in-house. We need to know what our risks are and how we do it. We don't need the staff to do it. We need a good, strong maintenance program.
And I might have missed something. What's been the catalyst for this review to happen?
A breakdown of one of the major generators and unable to get parts for it.
We had it's at Mill Road.
Yeah.
We had a generator that the government was playing up and you can't buy parts for the governor anymore. So then we had robbing parts from somewhere else to get this one.
Yeah.
And we had to buy a generator for 4 months or something to put in there.
Yeah.
So it's all cost.
So these are all, what, 15 years old?
Oh, a lot older than that.
Old moving in,
Yeah.
you're around.
I mean, 25 here.
It's just a matter of time.
Yes, it is. And there's a lot of new stuff on the market. And, we don't have the skill set to go out and decide which one's the right one. We need specialists, but we need to create a good scope around it so that we end up with a long-term solution.
And is it likely that we get the generators that we've got, are they all the same or are they all different?
We've got 2 different kinds, haven't we? Yeah.
Volvos.
And are they still viable, but they're not viable as a everyday solution? Would that be?
That's some of what the project's working on.
I'm just wondering is if we had 5 and they're not worth much, are they worth keeping them and make 1 or 2 good or make 3 good ones that we have backups?
That could be a staged approach.
Okay.
Yeah. So, because we're not talking buy them off the shelf for $20.
Yeah.
We're talking hundreds of thousands for each one.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure we do a good scope about what is it we need. How do we go to the market? One, there's lots of alternatives about how we go to the market. And then what is it that we want, long-term from these things from a maintenance perspective.
So it's going to like CAT or something. It's going to be on 30 years time that we know we're still going to get service for.
Yeah.
I'm not saying CAT's the one, but it's hypothetical.
Yeah. And then we've got a few people who've had experience of going to the market for generators in-house now who've worked for other organisations.
Yeah.
So we've got a little bit of the learnings that they've taken from those opportunities. So, yeah. So it's kind of watch the space. It will definitely be a council decision if we're going to go 5 because we're talking multiple years in big dollars. Yeah. Thank you. Next one. So yeah, just a wee bit more about our external funding. So you'll be aware that we've received the opportunity and been granted funds through the Regional Infrastructure Fund, or the program they're calling it as Flood Resilience Program by the government. So there were 6 projects approved for Waikato Regional Council. 2 of them are in the Hauraki, 4 of them are in the Lower Waikato. So the 2 we have is, as I mentioned before, we've got the Karakia Stop Bank upgrade. So just perfect timing. We've got it in our books. We need to do it. We put it in as an application. We get some funds back. Actually, just it's probably the best outcome you could ask for. So what we're saying is we initially agreed in our application that we thought the project was going to be around the $5 million cost base. They've awarded us 3.06 million to do the job. We now know, having gone to the market, that it's not going to cost us that much. So hence our percentage of cash from the ministry stays the same, but the dollar, of course, value will come down. So that's not a problem. We still get sort of 60% of the cost back. The second project we have is the Thames Valley Diversion Channel upgrade. So I know Ruben can speak to this a bit more when he's talking about his program, but ultimately it's an opportunity to look at extending the learnings and outcomes that we had from the original drainage trials around plantings and setbacks and fencing, and looking at the benefits that you gain in a drainage network from all of those benefits, finding places in Thames Valley to do it. So we're looking at $1 million from the ministry to achieve that. Certainly not money to be sneezed at.
Karen, just one question. We say we see the Karakia one. The tendering process was quite a big number. What goes into getting that number? So $400,000. What goes into to get that and justifies that money? Let's just do a for tendering.
I'm not sure whether you get the numbers from. So our procurement process for council determines a whole lot of things. One, you have to decide how risky the project is. Number two, you have to decide, is it multi-year? So if it's over more than a year's span of work, then we have to go to council, or finance committee of council, to get approval to undertake that piece of work. The other is the value. Even though it's 1 year, is it more than $2 million worth of work? We have other procurement arrangements we need to do. Tendering takes us to the market, so it's a government approved tender process on GETS. So we go to the market and we say, here's our project. Everybody who wants to come and do the work for us, show us your methodology, your how you're going to build up your costs, etc. And then we evaluate those tenders at the end of the time, and then we come up with a preferred supplier.
I think what Karen's saying, I want to clarify that, is were they scoped it at 5.1, that's the tender, and it's coming less than that.
Yeah.
So the consultant or whoever we've used to help consult, they believed it was worth more than that, and that the tender's coming below.
Yeah, and what we have to remember is the application stage for these was months and months ago, and our project scopes changed slightly even before we went to tender. So we're not now bringing in material from off-site. We're using all local borrowed, dig, dried material to do the upgrade. So the methodology of how the $5 million came about is slightly different to what we've gone to tender for. So we expected it to be less. We just haven't as yet told the ministry that we've got a cheaper project, because we haven't actually finished that tender process. That will happen next week when I have to take a report to the tenders board to get it approved. It does happen.
This government funding is, they always have to put it in the maximum thing of what the pro thing, because we can't go back and ask for 60% and it's a figure of 40% more. You've got to go the other way. They're happy if we go back and go, oh no, we can give you some money back.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the tendering process, you've obviously got engineering reports and all that stuff. We don't know exactly the guts of what's actually been spent before.
No, well, the only stuff that's been spent today from this project's a couple of $100,000, I think, and that's pretty much surveys, staff time, project management to understand the history and what is our scope for this project, and then the staff time to work on the material discussion. Where is it? How much is it? Is it suitable? Have we got enough to do the job? And a little bit of backwards and forwards about what the design should look like. And then, of course, we paid for a designer to do the work. Yeah. So that's where we started. That's our starting point before we went to tender. Cool.
Oh,
Yeah, just before we move on, just a bit of clarification. I was reading through the papers, trying to think where the Thames Valley Diversion Channel is.
It's not an actual.
Yeah, this was summation
Yeah,
We're going to upgrade potentially about a whole lot of different things.
yeah. I think we got 700 and something odd kilometres of Thames Valley drainage.
Yeah, something like 750 kilometres of King Valley drainage. And this project could do some fencing, drainage sites, reshaping, planting, up to about 50 kilometres of drains across drainage.
There's someone who's decided that the channels are better known than drain.
I know, we got stuck with it. Once it was applied for under that name, the ministry want to keep that name.
But upgrading drain.
Yes.
Thank you.
And
Just would Peter like to talk to that? Because you were like in your drainage committee chair, you had a lot of input into this in the past. So would you like to say something on that? I just think your knowledge on it's more than anyone or any of us other councillors and members of the room, I shouldn't say staff. Like, I mean, your knowledge is quite high in this spot.
I think part of the problem is you need to plant the right plants in the drain. That's number one. And number two, there's some maintenance involved. Who's going to do that maintenance initially? But it's interesting, it does work if you plant the right species of plants into the size of the drain. That's what I'll say, but I think the technology part of spraying that afterwards, you really need to walk the drain, just spray some of it at the very bottom, not mechanically when working. I think there has to be some human element in it. And I think once you've covered that, my own drain, which was a board drain, I actually physically got on the board drain and sprayed it myself at the bottom, and it really did work. But the biggest problem is the blackberry that comes in. And that's your big problem. How do you can't just spray that because you make clean plants.
But yeah, thank you for that input, because as I said, I remember sitting in drainage committees and you did some of the original drainage rolls on your own property, or
I still,
yeah. So I you know, your knowledge on it was greater than most of us sitting here. So thank you for that. So yeah.
But just to add to that, through the chair, so it's a 3-year program. The context, so we get about 1.1 million that comes from the government, about 700,000 of in kind, which means it'll be our staff time as our contractors out there, and we can align our works, business as usual works along those drains with work needs to be done at the same time. We can include that as part of our cost reporting. Plus, we'll also be talking to farmers about if it needs fencing to be done, then they'll do that in kind. And that supply of plants to various things. So there's like with all these projects, they say here's a carrot, with the funding, there's quite a lot of work to do with them in behind to get them up and running. So
I think the big thing is getting the farmer behind it and actually doing some of the work themselves, because it has been a bit of a challenge.
yeah, and we actually need that to happen to be part of the project to be recognised as a contribution to cost. Yeah.
So a part of it, extra money going into this, would that be a part of that, where we dig in drains with high silt? Is that a part of this as well, Ruben? I'm just career starting.
It can be where we.
So we can actually do more than what this is in here to do, because there's that funding as well, or not?
Oh, so not that.
No,
But we're going to look at the area, we actually needed to do some machine feeding that, and we can align that with the planting program.
Yeah.
We can include some of our business as usual funding from the target rate as part of the in-kind to this in a reporting sense, because we'll be doing the same work. And Nicole's been looking, and discussing with farmers potentially around the first year of where we might be able to start this project. There's quite a lot of work to be done there. Scoping. Yeah, scoping there. Collaboration between drainage and catchment management as well. The CMO officers will be involved as well. Provide support and access and agreements and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. The central government funding, I think you said it's for 3 years. Ruben, is like, what's council's position on receiving that funding? And is there any desire to see it continue after the 3 years? And if there is, what actions are being undertaken to encourage the government to continue down this path?
This is only the first part of this money coming out of the deluge funding, didn't it? So this is only, we put up for 36 million, and this is the first section of 12. So there is more relationship building with the government to go forward to get our 36 million. So this is only the first tranche of it. And I spent dinner with Shane Jones the other night, and they are fully committed to flood protection and drainage, that these sort of funding hopefully will continue in the future. So we will be there rubbing their back every time to try and get some more money out of them, because this is vital. As I keep saying, this infrastructure is strategic assets of the country that need to be paid for, and we will be rubbing on the back of any politician we want, if we can get our hands on, to try and say thank you very much for the funding, and we're still after more. So we're doing that all the time, and Noel and myself, Ben, every time the chance we can to get around an MP, that's what's happening. So thank you.
And from a staff perspective, what we need to do is to remain on top of our scoping of projects. So what I didn't show you, but I might just circulate for the committee's interest, is a graph that shows you the type of work we're doing this year. And by far, we're doing more scoping and investigating and getting ready for design work than on the ground capital work. Now, that's for the opportunity to put into the next lot of applications for the additional funding from the government. Because as the name states, and shovel ready, for those, everything has to be ready to run within 6 months of you getting awarded the money. So if we're not ready, we don't get the money. If we can't prove we're ready, they ask questions like, show me your consents, show me your funding in your annual plan or long-term plan. It's not a free-for-all given cash. There's a lot of strings attached with it. So our ability to be proactive and be ready for the opportunity to put as many projects forward as we can, because we're going to be doing them anyway. If we can get that partnership funding alongside, we're doing hopefully the right thing by the ratepayer.
And in that, go back to Connell's original question, that's why we struggled to get with the funding with shovel ready and stuff. We've struggled to get up to 8% of our budgets all the time in the last couple of years, because we've got these other projects that have to be completed and have to be, so our work program actually gets held back a little bit all the time. And it's real pressure on the staff, because Chris's KPIs is actually achieving these things as well. So there's double pressures coming from, we've got to spend this money from central government, but Chris has still got to achieve his KPIs all the time as well. So everyone, this actually puts a lot of pressure on staff that they have to try and accomplish it. And we've actually said in council a couple of times now, are we actually going too hard? Do we actually need to back off one or the other to make sure that we are still achieving everything we need? And and we're not going to stop taking government money, but are we putting the priorities in the right place all the time? And that's a discussion we've had around Karakia, and we all have had a couple of times now that we've just got to, it's another discussion we're all having in council all the time. Yeah.
And to answer the questions about the agreement has an expiry date. So we have an expectation within council that we have to complete our projects within 3 years. We have a start date we must start by and we must complete by. That doesn't mean that we can't then go into a new agreement for new projects for a different period of time. So it's kind of like managing, like you would with your own project. You've got a contract for something, you've got to manage those expectations through that project. Okay.
But yeah, I just wanted to state this puts a huge amount of pressure on staff.
But if we plan and gear up for it,
Yeah.
we're fine. So we're going to have that breathing time to plan. So I think that's all from me. I think the next slide would be Land Range. Oh,
Yep.
So thank you very much. I'll hand over to Ruth.
Thanks for your report.
So Kevin, before you go through, Chair, I want to ask a question around 44, the item in 44 in the back. It's about urbanisation and it's encouraging into rural drainage areas. I want to understand.
Ruben can probably answer.
That's what drainage.
Yeah, I just want to understand, where is the, I guess, power of understanding between territorial and WRC? Because from my perspective, and what we are correctly and wrong, is that we look after it when it's got nothing on it as a drainage area. But once the territorial authority decides to approve buildings on there, when does our autonomy stop? You know, where in all of this can WRC go, right, we don't agree with it? Because we did, I remember when we did Hinawai, we put in a, you know, we did not agree. And we put in against the resource consent, but we lost. So where in all of this can we come step back and say, right, you've decided to use this drainage land for urbanisation. We as the council do not want to be involved any longer because you're taking away our autonomy to make it a drainage safe system. Is there anything in line around that?
Yeah, so we did look at we did some work around that just ahead of looking at the ability for the drainage districts to look at going self-administering. So there is a bit of work around the policy of how do we deal with urbanisation because it's hitting us in Waikato, South Waikato, Waipa, Hauraki, Minima, Piaka District Council. And quite often there's an issue when it's at the bottom of the land drainage outlets as well. So, you know, we want to get water off pasture within 3 days. And they want it off pasture. They want it off their front lawns straight away. So there is a differing standard. So there is some work to be done there to get some of this handed back, for sure.
Yes, so the question I'm asking though is around before they even start to build there, you know, because, you know, that some areas were building on like Hauraki, for instance. That wasn't, that was a real swamp old area which we didn't approve, but we also look after the drainage in that area. And now if they build a huge factory and they're going to build big houses, where is the time that Waikato Regional Council can step away and go, you've just taken away our use, so, you know.
Yeah,
that's what I'm asking.
So if we get the ability to take part in the consent process, then we can have some effect on that by being an effective party.
Because
yeah, and we can also put in drainage easements and we can have those things that allow us to get in and clean. But what happens about that is that people don't necessarily respect those. So they start planting trees and gardens. So our ability to actually clean that network becomes very difficult. And that is a challenge for us around Local Government Act about how we deal with that. Because some of them should naturally go back to the territorial authorities to manage, because it becomes a stormwater issue at a different level rather than a land drainage issue.
I presume to be like a development fee, like if I've got a subdivision on the flats and the plains, it would be technically the same, but I presume something like in Lockerbie, the water comes down through Ngatea eventually, so I presume you break them for the development fee for water.
Well, we can't rate them, but the district councils should be rating them. So they should have a stormwater management plan in place to be able to capture funding from the developers to solve these issues. And there's varying stages of that happening all around the different territorial authorities.
Can I just butt in there? I think it's actually easy to give, when it's residential, it's easy to get the land to go back to the TA. It's the problem we got is lifestyles. That is the real issue where it's whereas we're talking about the other to codify.
Yeah.
And that's where we actually have, because they looked at rural residential and then out there Waikato district ended up letting that land be subdivided and it's still in a drainage network and it's caused even headaches. So where we've had land in Kara here that's in a drainage network, Manamata Piako's been happy to take it with, I think it took 2 or 3 years of discussing it, but they were in the end they were happy to take it back as in their urban stormwater system. But yeah, the real issue in the future is how we're going to deal with rural subdivisions, and they are a real issue because they can have large catchments of agriculture area running through them, and then all of a sudden they want to culvert up drains and what's happened out at the Cope is a real headache. And like you've got these land homes, beautiful $2 million homes, and they're all not connected to sewer. So you've got sewer tanks floating out of the ground and all sorts of things. It's horrible. So it's something on our radar, and Ruben and Adam here have been in heavy discussions and Noel online with Waikato and we've found out the learnings of this, and we've got to be proactive against it. So it is on our radar, and it's something that we are working hard to try and make sure that it goes back to where it belongs in that time. Like, if you want to add that out.
I mean, what Chair Robbie's just said, we even go a step back further. We've got some really good operational relations now with the district council. So we're meeting with the Yaka, Waikato, Hamilton, we've got Te Rapa North, to get into the zoning stage, not then, but just from the consent stage. So when the land is rezoning, it's going to be subdivided. We wave our hand up and go, hey, we've got land drainage here, we need to represent the interests of land drainage. And so we're getting a bit smarter, a bit more early entry into the process. We can't always guarantee the outcome, but we are having our say, and we've lesson learned from the code being an eye opener. So like what Robbie said, with Toyota have transfers, we've got Meta, we've got the other council.
It was certainly with a lot of the fast track consents coming through, you've got a small window to get involved. So, we're certainly involved in that where we can, but you don't get to say no to it.
And the amazing thing I didn't realise is technical, we had some great engineers and that 20 years ago or 15 years ago, that actually given the information to say these areas have got real issues if you subdivide it. And Roger Spooner was one of them, believe it or not, that the code said you've got to be really careful subdividing here, and no one listened to him. So like we got technical information of where subdivision should be and not, and it's so we've got a database here that we should use a lot better. We've got had some, as I said, it's on our radar. We're donkey deep in it, and it's really an issue that we're trying to resolve, and we've had a lot of input in. Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, just in respect to Hauraki District, this is an issue that we're aware with in Paira.
Yeah.
We've got urban development upstream of land drainage areas, which then come down via the region's assets into the Hanamiri River. I just want to make the members here aware that due to the rating based on a capital value of property, those $1 million houses create two problems. They're actually paying proportionally more per hectare because of the improvements on property.
Yes, I asked a question so that the chair could consider it's more than this drainage, it's more than WRC's concern. We might have to look at going to, our minister around this, our GNZ to start this escalating the problem.
Would you like to put an action, or would you like to?
Well, I think that it's well, maybe it's just an action, Jordan, around the chair, around how do we escalate this higher than our IMC group, by giving it to our WRC chair, CEO, to look at how do we escalate this to minimize the risk of WRC going into the future on lands that are being changing within the land usage. Because that's a big
Rural, residential, and rural is So how the effects of that on the land drainage and flood protection.
And escalating it upwards. So we've got the right.
Because one of the biggest effects is as soon as you put a hard cover in there, a road or a footpath or a blade roof, when the water comes out the other end through the stormwater, it comes into our system a lot faster. And that's the challenge going forward in the next 30 years. Have we got enough to cover for that? Yeah, Simpson was not designed for that. It's so code for the short period, but no.
You got something
Roughly.
you like to share?
What?
Nah.
Nah, not right now. So
Subdivision? No.
The report back that I see.
Oh, this does.
Yeah, we'll go.
We escalated to the IC.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
That's the action plan.
Yeah.
Or motion if you want to, I'm happy to put it up. And then from the ICM group, they can start. How do we escalate it? That's great.
So the Hauraki Scheme Subcommittee recommends ICMC. Yeah. It's got to go.
I think put a motion that we support staff and we want to escalate the of.
Risk of urbanisation.
Yeah, risk of urbanisation. Yeah, that's good. Thank you, Ruben. Yeah.
I'll move the motion.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you could actually say as noted in item 4 of the.
We're always in
Yeah.
Because it's a big issue for us.
Yeah, that's, and as said, Noel and yourself and Adam have been on how much you've had to put into that peak water, the chloride, yeah, that's, I just sit there and have hemorrhage when I start thinking the flooding and that, and I've known people that live on that, actually, a Springdale family, one of the, Waits, a girl that her dad used to own the Springdale service, they live on the hill and they look down there and they said some of the things are horrific, what they've seen flooding there in the last couple of years, so it's horrible.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I think that's a good point to bring us back to what the importance and the significance of land drainage is actually. So, I mean, our guys, and we've got you've got Ian, Keith and Nicole in the background, our teams, they understand, for the region, we've got 180,000 hectares.
Yep.
So it's about 7%, that's across the whole area, $17 billion, 2099, so it'll be higher than that now. And the GDP is significant to the region and the nation. So when we talk about these issues of being significant, it's significant to this, to the region and the nation. So we've got 1,500 drains and about 2,100 kilometres of drains themselves in it. And 94 funding systems to manage it. So that's what the drainage plan network work program looks like. Thames Valley, we've got 760 kilometres and 9 subdivisions. So that's the scope of the sort of work. I like to put that up because I think that's significant and I don't like people to lose focus on it because that's why I'm here, to make sure that keeps operating so that we keep getting this as a region and a nation. That's my job.
No, fair enough. And my
So, yeah.
It's related out of that.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. So support, especially if we've got the ears of ministers and that, then we should be pushing those issues up. Urbanisation is one. But now that's what our team focuses on, keeping this going so that our farms can keep farming basically. Next slide. Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, like Karen was saying, it's been a catch-up year, really. So we're still catching up from Gabriel and through that. So in that last year, there was a lot of rework going. Means we spent a lot more labour and we spent a lot more contractors. So for Thames Valley, we were, I think, about 30% over budget, and that reflects quite a bit more work that was done in that area. And that's with our guys out talking with farmers and issues coming up, more silt coming down into different areas that have been washed through the system. So probably a catch up from a lot of that, really. Plus also some succession training going on. Next slide. Yeah, so that's what it looks like across all of the networks there. Aka was a bit over. Franklin and Waikato were okay, and Thames Valley was over. And that reflected, I guess, how hard we got hit over here as well in that catch up. You're expecting that to come back into line in the next financial year. Have you got the next slide? Yeah, that's the individual subdivisions, and there is the spreadsheets in the back of the thing. So we go into the next one. Yes, I guess that was saying is that overall the level of service was provided. There was a lot of triaging going in there, requests from farmers that Ian and his tenure would have a look at, see what needs to be done. We can't do it all. We did go over, budget by 29%. That reflected in getting 700 Ks of the drains sprayed, and they will look at those drains and agree when they can go in with farmers each time around cropping, whatever's going. About 50 Ks of machines to be machine cleaning, and then some catch-up works. And we've got some succession training as well. We've been able to bring Nicole in earlier, and Nicole and Keith have been working alongside Ian as a handover for getting into that. Because as you know, when you lose someone like Ian, who has built up a huge amount of knowledge around it and landowner agreed, how the system works, then we've been able to see the significance of that and get Ian time to unload and give that across to Nicole and Keith. So they're going to hit the ground running. I guess it's 1st of November. And then, so, you'll be talking to those guys going forward. About rain. But yeah, it's a big area and it's significant. So they'll need time to catch up. And believe me, I believe they're up to it and the teams are up to it. So they're excited.
Was there any significant, double spraying that you've done in the last couple of years too, eh?
Yeah, you think
Because
so?
the areas that, because the cyclones and the work program got put back, we had to double spray some areas.
Double spray and catch up, and then some areas the water didn't go down when it did, it overgrowed again, and so, yeah. It was a tough year, and just like Karen was saying, it's a catch up. Yeah, next slide.
It just,
And there's that diversion channel planting project as well.
just through the chair, with our spraying program, which we identified what we're going to machine clean, so we've got spraying those. So that's why, although we've got 750 days of spraying, it's only that much of a spray because the rest was machine clean. Yeah. But also, at the beginning of the season, the last couple of years, we've had drains full of water, so it has been trying to work around, waiting for those water levels to drop to then spray with the weeds that have been come up. We're also starting in our area to compete with farmers and cultivators, putting in spuds, onions, all sorts of crops, as well as maize. So we have a small window of 2 or 3 weeks now, and in the autumn between crops of being able to spray or machine clean. So sometimes, right, we haven't got the plant to machine clean, well, I don't need it until the second round is spraying. A lot of the time, once the first time spraying, those drains in the autumn, because they have to be.
Yeah. And the team has spent quite a bit of time the last few months planning work, looking at it. Some of it they've been able to triage and say, well, actually, we can do that this year. We'll put it to next year. So they're building next year's work program as well. And that's through discussion with our customers or our landowners. And then we talked about the diversion channel planting, which was that was that project that we talked about, Karen, where we've got the $1.08 million from the government. And we've got to put $720,000 towards it in kind over the next 3 years. So Nicole's been going through a bit of a project of looking where we could do that planting, some discussions with landowners, so we can kick off some this year, then a bigger push next year around that. So, we'll try and align our business as usual work with it. So some of the funding that we would put towards that can go as being reported as part of the project. And then we'll be looking at landowners to, hopefully get excited enough to help with fencing and fencing costs. Now we can include that fencing costs as contribution against that project.
Ruben, David, who are we looking at doing the plantings? There is that, I forget what the name of the business is in Cambridge Way, but if you use them for planting, they basically do a program for 3 years of maintenance behind the planting. So they'll go back and fill in the gaps and a spray program to do. Could be, they're out on the other side of, yeah, he does all native plants and stuff.
Yeah,
Really, well, maybe go out and see him, because he's asked that he'd like to get involved in some of these sort of projects.
yeah. So we've engaged a project manager to help us with that, and she, Leanne, who helped us with the green corridor.
Yeah.
So some of those learnings from our earlier plantings will come across to this. So because with this $1.8 million project, you do need a dedicated resource to help pull it together. So she's helped, and I think you're right. I mean, I heard that planting's good, maintenance is the key.
Yeah.
And it does.
Well, you need to put the right plants in place.
And as well.
I think that's it. Don't listen to your consultants all the time. Because sometimes they're very wrong. I'm not joking.
We've, like I said, we've got some on-ground experience as well. And then we've got some success on the ground that we can look at.
Yeah,
use it to drive us forward.
Stuff that's been done for about 6 years now, and we can go back and see what's worked and what hasn't. So we should be using that to premise of what we're going to do in the future.
And the key is to get it to get our guys involved, because they'll know this, but not to overburden them with that. So there'll be a assistance from the CMOs, our guys, but there'll also be external people coming into plant. Yeah. Because they've still got business as usual work to deliver, which is critical to, to keeping the drains working.
Yeah.
And there's just some pictures of some of the things we get involved with, along with doing sort of retaining walls and reclaim, the dropping in. And our guys are innovative and try and get the job done with a long-term view and the cheapest way we can do it. Yeah, and I think there was Paul's Road we needed to, and that, you know, there was a lot of water went down through that cistern as part of Gabrielle and that. And that, you know, when you get again, it's urbanisation and this and that, so there'll be some sort of discussions there to maybe hand back the bottom end of that, because the top end is handed back, but there was some good work there done by the team. Done it as cost effective as we could, really. The next one. You know, and I guess the other thing is that we've got vegetation control. This is just to show some of the work the guys are doing around getting trees out of drains and yeah. So next one. Yeah, and then of course we've got the solar farm in Te Aroha West going out through there. Some work with them to make sure we can get access. That they wanted to do some drain plantings, so some of the drain cleanings we got them to do. Then the guys and keep an eye on them to make sure they delivered what we wanted, what we needed, and that was actually critical because they did some things that we wouldn't have done, but they're tidied up. So good work there, Keith. That's good bit of work. Thanks, mate. So that's up and running, and we've got a good relationship with that team. And we're getting solar farms pop up all over the place. We've got 3. We've got 2 in Rangiora. You've got another one in Waitarima. You've got this one over here. One further.
No, there's one in right across the road. They've got the sheep. That farm's been signed. They got an unconditional offer on that for 5 years to go into solar farm as well. Shawless sheep farmers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a big group of them out there.
Yeah, so some of them are coming through utility network consent process. Some are coming through fast track. So we've definitely got, you know, looking at those issues to see where we can get involved, because quite often they do include our drainage network, and we do need to keep them 10 metres away so we can get in and clean. Some places they want to clean because they don't want anywhere near their panels or their, you know, direct current networks. But yeah, they're certainly stacking up. But yeah, so that's it really for land drainage. If there's any questions around that.
I just had a question for Adam on page 41. With everything involved with Te Aroha, you know, moving under the Te Aroha Bridge. It seems quite a risky operation. Look at that picture. Page 41. I think the roll on everybody was one equipment for that, and I mean,
was one
waste of things a bit just ruining that work, but
Well, people in the schools and the years of it. So
This is a frequent hotspot. And yeah, that's every time we get a fresh, we always get the break down again. And that's no longer the claim. Yeah, the operating procedures, they tell them they can do things in the guide. So, yeah.
The boat looks like it's tipping a bit, though. It's like you've got the one kind
For these guys, we do this in cahoots with MPDC. So what the guys are doing there, they're not actually doing too much. They're actually looking for areas to wrap the ropes around to make sure we take a pitch up on the bank.
Oh, okay.
And then he's actually putting those big loads of weight with them.
Right.
Yeah, those boys are just, they're about areas to get access to the ropes. I'm showing you, they train children.
Okay.
Actually, that procedure, what you just explained there is exactly the same as what Karen was talking about earlier, where you were up at between Pyro and Ems. And you had boats in the water. All they were doing was wrapping slings around logs, and then they would remove, and then they would be pulling the logs out of the river. So it's the same. They weren't actually physically pulling logs out with boats. Chain story. No. It's Noel was there that day. He got mud all over his new white shoes when we were there listening to the proceedings. So yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, thank you, Mr. Chair. What I'd like to do is I'd like to acknowledge Ian's contribution, because I think it's been huge in this area. And I'd also like to acknowledge the way that he has gone about gathering information and putting it in a format where it can be handed over to the 2 new rising stars, Keith and Nicole. So thank you, Ian. Personally, I think you've done a bloody good job. and thanking Nicole and Keith for wanting to pick it up and showing that you've got the tenacity and the skills to do it. So, you know, thank you, Ian, and I think you're in good hands with Keith and Noel, a great team. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Just not a couple of questions. Yeah, it's all right. Yeah. Just point 45, the self-administration policy has obviously been approved and gone through. Just in terms of what level of interest there is and different ways of looking at doing it.
There's been, well, I can answer, for Ruben and our previous game. In Lower Waikato, there was always an interest in, of some of the catchments going self-administrating, and because of their interest, we've rewritten the policy to allow this to happen. And if there's interest of any of the Kings Valley ones to do it, it would definitely, we'd have to put it up for consideration as long as it met there's certain criteria that has to fit. And that's why we've written that policy. It doesn't mean that we walk away from it. We just allow you to manage it. We'd still be collecting the rates for it. And all it does is that membership looks up and maintain the governance of running it and of making sure it operates and that it's meeting the criteria, that it's doing the same job as what we are doing right now. In that, they can do it cheaper, but you have to have the willingness of being able to show that you can do that generational and not it's just going to be done for a short period of time to save a little bit of rate. It's not a little bit, it's quite a bit of rate money, but it's that you're prepared to put all that effort into having a generational self-managed drainage scheme. So it is quite a bit to it, Conway. It's not just take it.
I think we actually covered all that, you know, but I just was interested in what level of interest.
We're about to, one is about to come in, the extra one for the Lower Waikato is about to get signed over.
Yeah, so Waikato, the Hauraki one was assessed and recommended to go through with the last item. The process is that you would make a change as part of the annual plan process, and they would kick in from 1 July next year. So it's a risk-based approach, I guess. Lends itself to probably more subdivisions with less consents and less issues within that subdivision itself, and probably a number of landowners. Because when you do get to the bigger subdivisions with a lot of landowners, then there is sort of a role of responsibility for the regional council to deliver that service across all of those landowners. So that, you know, we can go into discussions with landowners about, hey, well, you know, this needs to be clean and we need to go there. But when you get it down into a group, you've got to be careful that, you know, that some of the changes aren't being further. So we always, you know, it's you know, as required sort of thing where they would make an application and would be assessed by the council and not necessarily approved.
Yeah, and I think you need 51% of the catchment to agree to start off with.
Not very targeted.
Thank you for that. And just another question, which has sort of been covered or discussed earlier, but that 146 is being shrinked. So that's addressing the same issue with quotas means. What we've looked at and started making. I'm going to talk about it again, but it's just as well. Yeah.
You have Carolina's motion.
Yeah, I got it. Action right here. It has to be an action. Recorded, noted as an action.
Okay.
Yeah. I've got it here.
So can we, have you any other discussion? We have a mover, please. Roger.
Sure.
Seconder. Ian. All in favour? Aye. Against? Eric, thank you.
I'd like to get back to the chairman, the next item, current reliability programs. It's update. I'd like to welcome Lisa Drysdale to the floor. Welcome, Lisa. Lisa's our team leader in the defence, sorry, service group, it's been our asset management thing. So the home tennis have been annual reports. Provide that for subcommittee. So it's about the review. Thanks very much. I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. I have not prepared any slides, mainly because the slides that Ruben and Karen did were of all of the different works that are going on, I thought were excellent. And so if we need to look at any specific sites, we'll go back to their slides. I guess the key thing to understand is where Keith and Ian and Nicole's teams look at what are we doing today. My team look at what's the quality of work being done and what do we need to do in the long term. So normally council see me when we're talking long-term plans and 3 to 10 year to 50-year strategies is where we come in. So when you read through the report, you see us talking about what are some of those long-term things we're doing to be more sustainable in our practices. So again, we do the annual condition inspections to ensure that, you know, we understand what the condition and the performance of the assets are, so that we can then say, are there trends that are going on, you know, and things that we need to change in how we are managing the assets, or what we're prioritizing in our capital plans, or do we need to think about doing more work over in Te Kowhai versus Te Aroha drainage areas. So that's where we sit, and that is why I bring this report to, again, ICMC and to the subcommittees annually, just to say here are the long term. This is what things are looking at a system level, as opposed to necessarily an asset specific site level. So yes, I guess the question is for you all is, do you have any questions that you wish to ask?
I'd start. I'd like you to explain, and this isn't a bad question, this is one that your area's done really well, is the project where we've gone in and we've actually assessed that assets that maybe looked at being end of life actually aren't. And we've put some technical capability behind that to prove that assets have got a lot longer lifespan than what we thought. And that, you know, we've had that paper to ICM, so I'd like you to just talk on that a little bit, that your group's doing other work that is actually improving lifespan of assets and stuff like that as well. It's not just a
Yeah. So one of the key things we did 2 LTPs ago was say we need some proper technical experience in here. So we hired Steve Hall, who's a reliability engineer. He has both electrical and mechanical degrees. And I used to work with him when I worked at Fonterra in maintenance there. And so we were very, very lucky to get him. And some of the programs, when we went, what can we bring from industry into what we do here in the council, was we looked at how were we looking after the pump stations. And again, every pump station is its own unique site, and every pump station, again, what was set up by the local committee, drainage committees when they were first installed. So as we go from catchment to catchment, we find different equipment choices, different design choices on how they were installed. So it makes how do you plan a procurement strategy, so you know you can replace things and have the correct parts on in the stores for when they fail, very, very hard. And Steve has managed to again, every 6 months he's out and he goes to every single pump station, and he's going to every single floodgate as well, to check how are those motors running, are those pumps running as effectively as they can, or how they've been designed. And through that work, he's able to then have the discussions with the operations team on whether or not that pump needs to come out to be overhauled. And through doing that work, we're generally able to, we've been able to move from a fixed term strategy, so just pulling them out every 8 to 10 years and sending them off to the overhauler to do work and then putting them back in, to actually being able to have the discussion on some of those pumps don't need that work. So instead of spending $40,000 for every single pump we're pulling out, you do the work, it's about $2,000, and then you're able to say yes or no. Yes, it needs to go to the overhauler, or no, it doesn't. And so through the last 6 years of that work, we've been able to redirect about $500,000 that we didn't need to spend into the other operational programs, across the region. And then the next stage that he's been working on with, again, with the operations team, is that quality of work that our overhaul was doing. So again, it's really hard because those people that we've been working with for 30, 40 years, you've got trust in them. So to bring a new player on, we need to know that they're going to do the same quality of work. And they've been able to do that. So now we have a motor overhaul or a pump overhauler up in Albany that I believe the Lower Waikato was sending 4 or 5 pumps to this year. And again, that difference in cost with sending it to them is about $20,000 difference. So if we're able to release $60,000 back into the program for other work, again, that means we're not taking the money out of the reserves. That's better for rates all around. And that's where I go. Those are the long-term things that we're putting in place to make what we're doing more sustainable and more efficient. Another piece of work that you may have heard from the operations team is last year that focus was on fixing all of the things that came from Cyclone Gabrielle, right? We were in response. We had to fix what was wrong along the rivers and the berms. When we look at the information in the report, you'll see that one of those stats is some of the assets, we've got 4% of the assets that are in a worse condition than the year before. That when you dive into what was going on, that was erosion where, the dirt had washed out behind some of the retaining walls. It's because the assets were in use for longer again, and the water was higher, there was more corrosion in some of those areas. There was more wear and tear. So when we looked at what work needed to occur this year, when all of that information was gathered over last summer, again, the team sit down, the operations team and my team sit down and go, what should we prioritize? What do we need to prioritize to, again, maintain the long-term sustainability of the schemes, but also to reduce the risk of what's going out there? And so again, and then that information, once it's been through there, comes to Karen's and my level, and we have a discussion on how do we resource this and how do we fund this work to make sure that, again, we are managing both that risk, but also the cost of what's happening out there. And that process is one of those things that, again, we've been working on for 4 to 5 years to get more efficient and get more visibility over how do we make these decisions. And while, again, you'll hear teams grumble, and I agree with the grumbling around some of the IT solutions that we've got, people will say that they absolutely hate Infor. I understand completely. By the teams going forth and continuing to work with the IT solutions we've got in place, it means that they've been able to capture what they're spending their time doing emergency works are. So again, last month we were able to have the conversation where we've now got all of last year's data of where the emergency works are, and finding that for one of the teams, 30% of their call outs last year was to clean weed off screens. So now we can have the conversation of, we've got the data, we can justify putting telemetry in place and putting cameras in place so that we can monitor those 6 pump stations that are causing 30% of the work for that site or for that team in that area, so that we can not have them driving out there just to go and check that, again, things are working. We can have it so that they can see when the pumps stop. So, and again, that will help us with both our carbon, reducing our carbon loading, because we can reduce our fleet use. And it also, again, if we can have them going out there because we can see when there's something going wrong, it means that we can free them up to, again, focus on some of those more proactive jobs rather than, again, spending 30% of their time just cleaning 6 pump stations, weed screens. So those are the types of things that, again, we're focusing on at that more strategic, tactical level on how do we make things more efficient out there.
But we sounds very, very sensible, and that it's great to hear that. And I guess probably not necessarily a question for Lisa, but that we're potentially able to extend the life of some of our assets. Logically, that would have an implication on the depreciation rates. It's a pretty big impact. The other rates are set. And I would imagine it's only a few pumps, the magnitude of the data, right? But I would hope that's being looked at just to see what is the magnitude of doing things smarter. Or the magnitude of the savings. And you comment on, you know, what's the relevance of the scheme of impact rate?
I mean, yeah, I'm going to probably something like an innate care, maybe, but so there's always going to be ups and downs, overs and unders, and I guess all the other schemes are funded. Yes, technically speaking, you know, given the hundreds of assets that we have across flood pumps, floodgates, you know, we've got different funding models as well, which can allow way to Hauraki is a little bit more beneficial in the sense that it's more of an equity funded approach. So when we do a pump station upgrade, and probably you would probably notice the sides and that do probably funding for that. But yesterday we don't have to go. We have a big bucket of funding. So depreciation is funded through the schemes at C3 through the rates. So they'll be signed by what they do, the rest, etc. Blood weight is compartmentalised, so we have to go and consult with individual landowner groups around like motor car, for example, and Calfree. So it's a very different approach to and so that funding mechanism for that project would have only been with the way of the funding policy. So yes, my short answer to your question is yes, that should result in spread of depreciation and lower cost, but also cost will increase over time as well. You know, services, materials, design, of the safety, all that too. So, but I'll make a stand over to Karen, what I guess what you mentioned, Karen, that on the bill, Karen, as well as I manager, Stephen, you know, I guess what the process is around, and it's sort of,
ultimately, the funding was the citizens of the money. But if we started from scratch with over $2 million consultation, and we added some community and some of it's mastered and enable us to understand the budget, actually the function. It's a very small portion of the overall cost of their asset. So the expected benefits that we support into would come from us rather than sending staff out to check on it, either during VAU times or the flood.
I guess just a quick clarification, yeah, I was thinking, I think really, me in the head was if a pump was scheduled to come out to be rebuilt after 8 to 10 years, we can find it, and I don't know, maybe we won't know for a few years, but that through actually individually looking at each pump, that changed from 8 to 10. Well, is that potentially going to have a big enough magnitude to have an impact on the overall cost? I guess I was thinking about this.
That will have an effect on the cost that we budget for maintenance.
Yes.
So that should shrink in size of cost.
But it won't have an implication in terms of depreciation.
Not depreciation, because your asset can sit there no matter whether it's running or not. Or being pulled out or not, but you do fund in your operational maintenance budget the number of times you pull the pump station pump out in its life. So if you're pulling it out 10 times instead of 15, less cost, so there's theoretically your budget more.
So the operational cost will increase, but the replacement cost not necessarily the impact.
Correct.
So therefore depreciation maybe fall impact.
No, I wouldn't expect it. Then what you would have was hopefully the time when you go to replace that exit in the future, you might have efficiencies that's not there, or the years ago, you've got it very much.
But, yeah, just looking at page 66, you've got the map of the pump stations conditions. Basically 4% are in good condition. The rest are not, and 12% are in very poor condition. Many of them in this area. Do you anticipate that 12% will get better next year, or is it going to get worse? Which way are we getting?
With the program, the priority one program that if, again, Alex and Keith and people are doing right now, we should see a marginal improvement, with what's going on. We, again, when we say there's a pump station or a floodgate station, or site, there are anywhere between 6 to 20 assets that we'll be looking at on that site. So if we know that it's just one or two specific components that are bringing the overall score of that site down, and we can fix those, we can raise the entire score. And that again is the work that, as I say, Keith and Nicole and Alex and Hayden and co are really focusing on this year, so that those ones we can, we are, while we then also do the planning on how do we do some of the bigger ones where there's multiple components that we have to fix. And that's where you then see those coming through into, again, the capital program and the major maintenance programs. Yeah.
And I think that you add to that, Ian, is health and safety always comes first. So if it's a situation, I think we had one in Lower Waikato just the other day that needed a new safety guardrail to do weed removal. That is a high priority. So that is prioritised that way. So it's not just the asset, it's thing that is prioritised in health and safety and other things as well. So I think that could be, it maybe looks a lot worse than what it really is.
That's good to know.
Yeah, but it is. I know, like, if health and safety comes in, that went straight to, mate, what was that, Kate? It was the other day, in Lower Waikato. Yeah. Greg come to me and Nolan said it has to be done immediately. And it's like $10,000 or something, whatever it was, to put new guardrail around it all. Mirror, yeah. So it's I should both be talking, but health and safety comes first and other things come second because of weed. And these guys are out at midnight, some nights, dragging weed off gates at silly hours, and it needs to be safe.
No, it's generally, if you're looking at assets and 4% are good and the rest are worse, depending on how far bad they get it. And the same with the floodgates as well. There's obviously long-term issues there. So,
yeah. And again, on this side, I mean, you all know it, soil structure, right? It's so weak and it erodes so easily that you can have something go from being okay, and then you have Cyclone Gabrielle and then 2 other storms come through, and all of a sudden we've got all this erosion, that now has to be dealt with. So things can, while structurally, concrete lasts 80 years, if we're dealing with, some of those other structures with the inlets, they can change and a year, 3 years, quite easily, depending on what's going on.
Have a question? Thank Lisa for her paper. And you've had support of council with Steve's work. Every time that's come to a council, finance or integrated catchment, everyone's been 100% supportive of the work that yourself and Steve have done in that spot. And the savings that you've been able to find, and hopefully that continues in the future, finding other new ways of saving money to the scheme. So thank you, Lisa, for that. Awesome. So do I have a mover, please? Ron Connell, second by Roger. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to welcome Michelle White. She's an environment, I think, thing of independent to present to us the pathways to sea treasury, which is pretty much into the business end or the beginning end, and she won't see all her thunder, but this is much more than a regional context, this is the national context. And Michelle and team has led the way in this pretty much and really exciting results. Currently, but also going forward. So thanks, Michelle. Looking forward to it.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, my name is Michelle. I'm on the environmental compliance team, and I've been managing the Pathways to the Sea program for the past few years, and that's what I'm here to present to you today. I've got some slides to show you. Just a few slides, most the details in the report. So just sharing a few slides just to highlight some of the work and some cool pictures. So the goal of Pathways to the Sea is to improve the safe downstream passage of fish at our pump stations. And the objectives are to test some new tools, do some research, test new tools, develop a strategy. The focus is on eels, tuna, because those are our largest native freshwater species and are migratory species. So they are especially susceptible to our pump stations. The program started in about 2019, so about 5 years ago, and it's nearing completion now with the development of a strategy. So this is just a slide showing all the tools that we tested as part of the program. So we tested quite a few different tools. We tested some pumps, we tested some behavioural things, we tested electrical barrier, trap and transfer. So here I've got the 3 different pumps we tested. So we tested a Bedford pump, the modified McEwen's pump, and the Archimedes screw pump. So we tested the Bedford pump that was at Orchard Road pump station. So that's a smaller Bedford pump. The results weren't that great with that one, even though it's termed as a fish-friendly pump. There was, in terms of mortality, the pump showed better results, but it still inflicted considerable damage to our eels. So for New Zealand situation with the smaller size pump at a higher rotational speed, we don't consider that one a fish-friendly pump. We tested the modified McEwen's pump. So that's a brand new pump that was manufactured in New Zealand in partnership with WRC McEwen's and Waikato Tainui College for research and development. So that pump was installed at Huntly Golf Course Pump Station. It was tested for fish friendliness earlier this year, and it had some really, really good results, really promising results. So we had 108 eels through the pump, and out of those 108, 105 came through really healthy, and we had 2 that showed some damage. Looked like there could have been strike marks on the eels, and 1 died overnight. But the one that died overnight, the cause was unknown, so we can't say if that was because of the pump. But overall, 97% success, so that was really promising result. We tested the Archimedes screw pump, so that was the first one installed at Mangawhero Pump Station. We tested that 2023 and 2024. That we had about 250 eels through, and we had some damage to only 2. So that was some bruising to 2 of them. So that one has shown 99% fish friendliness. So compared to our traditional axial pumps, these results are really, really promising for those 2 pumps, for the modified McEwen's and the Archimedes screw pumps. We also tested the electrical barrier that was in the hopes of deterring eels from going through pump stations. This particular trial wasn't hugely successful. We could see we tagged eels, so we could see that the eels were still passing through the electrical barrier current and through the pump. So yeah, there were obviously some holes in the electrical current, so that's not a tool that we're recommending moving forward. We tested an acoustic tool, and that was just that is a monitoring tool to see if eels are being striked by pumps. That tool requires more testing as well. Not something we're recommending, because I think we know now through our other research that we know that traditional pumps inflict damage and mortality to eels. We tested a gravity bypass outlet. So we did a behavioral study here. This was at Steiner's pump station. So we tagged some eels and we tested their movements in the catchment. So we had some transponders at several locations in the catchment, and we could see their movements going through the gravity bypass outlet and through the pump station. So that just gave us some more knowledge on the behavior of eels. And we could see that they did use the gravity bypass outlet when that was open. So they moved up and downstream through the bypass outlet. So it was a lot of feeder eels, so not migratory eels. So feeder eels were using that bypass going up and down. So yeah, that was good knowledge that we can add to our knowledge base. We tested, and the last one was trap and transfer as well. So that the idea of trap and transfer is to trap eels above the pump station and then move them to a safe location downstream of the pump station. So that's a really good tool where we can get iwi involved. We did a trial at 2 pump stations earlier this year. We did that at Bell Road and Motukaraka, and over 2 nights, we had nets that were set over 2 nights, and across both of those pump stations, we captured 350 eels, and those were big migratory eels. So those were captured, and then they were safely released into the Waikato River. So that was a really good result. We had an iwi contractor help us with that. He used his own net design, which was a pretty cool net design. It reached right across the watercourse, and he could safely deploy it from the water's edge. So he didn't have to get into the water, which, yeah, can be a safety hazard, especially in the deep watercourses. So he could deploy it from the water's edge and retrieve it again from the water's edge. So trap and transfer is something we really want to implement going forward. That's one of our key tools to help prevent mortality at pump stations until fish-friendly versions can be installed. What is next?
Sorry, can I just get clarification?
Sure.
Gravity bypass outlet, is that like that?
Yes, it is. Yeah. It's just the alternative route. That eels can use or other native fish.
We're lucky in Waihau, most of our outlets have locates with some of lower Waikato doesn't. They are totally pump catching. So they everything has to go through.
So that use of fish-friendly pumps would be prioritised to those catchments.
At the moment, it has been. Churchill has had 2 Archimedes screws just put in this year, which are working really well. That modified McEwen there, that's it. The 100 golf course, that's actually going to go into the work out when that McEwen was now it's running. It's mostly just a little bit of head pressure. So it's going to go into Churchill as there's a 2-stage pumping system in Churchill. So essentially, so it's going into there because it doesn't need that head. So these new pumps, we're actually learning a lot what they're capable of because we're the first ones to do it as well. So I believe like the great thing about the McEwen is that if they modify, you'd have to ask Ian because that was a 2030, I think it was.
2430.
Or 2430, and that's different than we are in Hauraki. What are we mainly in Hauraki?
Basically 2430.
I know they are.
Or 30.
So these are pumps that we could retrofit, and that's a really important that we could retrofit McEwen into our pump station, existing pump stations if they needed to be replaced. So that's really, so we don't have to go through the huge cost of putting Archimedes in every pump station in the future. So that's where this modified McEwen is really important, and understanding its capabilities of head pressure of head it can pump. I think it's about 200 less the headers that we thought it was capable of. So it's definitely we've got to work out where we can put it and where we can't. So yeah, a good question, O'Connell. We've had some huge learnings from.
It's also through the chair's design of accessible in New Zealand.
Yes,
Which is going to be a significant advantage.
Yeah. And thanks to Tainui for help funding the research of getting this built, because Tainui was a part of making this happen. So I think we got some government funding as well to get it done, I think. But yeah, this was done before I was previous. This has been a 5-year project to get there. That's a totally new in colour design. It actually looks and when they dismantle it, it looks very similar to an Archimedes screw pump inside. That actually there's no, it's sort of hollow centered, so the fish can actually swim up through the fins. It's a really amazing design. It's totally different. Actually, next time we have a committee meeting, Greg has actually got a 3D model. We should bring it across so you can understand what it actually looks like and what it's capable of doing. Yeah, it's quite impressive.
Can I just make another point? I think it was very interesting to read it in your paper here that at times it's suspected that the migratory urge is ruled on by flood water.
Yeah.
Because there could be a lot of ratepayers really scratching their heads at this work when they say, well, hang on, the floodgates open probably
Yeah.
12 or 16 hours a day.
Yeah.
Surely the eel can go through there, but if what I read here, my understanding is correct, probably disproportionately more eels want to get out when it's actually the pump should be operating.
Exactly, yeah. So even though a lot of the Hauraki, I think only 2 that don't have a bypass, yeah, even though they do have bypass, yeah, it's when the eels are moving is during the high rainfalls and the flood events. So that floodgate will be closed and then they'll have to move through the pump.
So can I just make a suggestion that's a piece of information to be really useful for particularly targeted ratepayers who are going to end up funding a fair bit of this, maybe not all, and make possibly it's fantastic if Tonga and other entities are involved with this as well, because it's beneficial all of them. But it'd be quite useful for targeted ratepayers to be aware that actually there is genuinely an advantage to the eel.
Yeah.
Fish friendliness.
Pardon?
For the fish friendly,
Yeah.
So, yes, this from my in the end on top of the up for me. One of the great benefits which probably have is because those mature pumps we maintain it last in the river system brilliant pump, aren't they? So retrofitting a new impeller to them is smart move.
Just a question, it's in relation to your work, you've done this for 5 years and you've come up with recommendations. What's your team do now? Because it's now passing down to operational and ICF, is it? What's happening with your work?
My team personally, or yeah, like the team that were working on this. Yeah, so I guess our team works on various different projects. So this was one aspect of our work, and yeah, me personally, I'll be taking up another project, but we'll also be implementing this. So we'll be managing projects. So we'll be managing the trap and transfer. So we'll be managing aspects of the implementation of it. And then if there's any other, if we get a chance to do any further research, we'll be managing that as well. And one of the recommendations is to test the Bedford pump at the Pairoa main drain. So that's a larger Bedford pump than the one that was tested at Orchard Road. So we're planning to do that this summer.
So I think the question you were asking was how do we move into implementation with the output of the strategy?
Yeah.
So all the recommendations we take on board. So when we go through that planning stage and recognise what pumps need to be looked at next, we have a prioritised list that comes out of the strategy which is to the risk to fish life in the catchment. So we then marry the two together, so asset life and catchment environmental needs, and we make the decision to be able to pump those things. So we stay within their budget, but we work on these that we developed.
Yeah. The other thing we're doing is we're testing the water behind all of our flood defences to see what's living there. So we can then make that decision on is this needed or is this not needed. If things are high and dry, then there'll be no tuna living there because there's no water for it to live. There's no need to do this. Versus if we know, there's a huge ecological area and things living in there, then, it brings us onto the table as an offer.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I just wanted to reiterate the point about the modified McEwan's that it is a New Zealand-based and a manufactured pump. So it is one that can just slot into the pump station without having to rebuild the entire pump station like you need to do with the Archimedes screw. So the Archimedes screw comes from the Netherlands, so it comes a long way, and the Bedford comes from the UK. So yeah, a definite benefit with the modified McEwens.
And the photo, have you got the photo of the meter and a bit eel that actually went through to McEwen?
No, not in this presentation.
So it had a 1.2 metre eel swam through the McEwen while it was running in it. Perfect.
Yeah, that was one of the first eels that came through, and it came out and it was perfect.
I had a photo. There was a photo of it coming out the other side.
Yeah,
I bet it.
Yeah, it talks a lot about the fish getting downstream. How do they get upstream?
yeah, and that is yeah, the next step that we need to look at. So at the moment, the only option is the gravity bypass. When that is open, they can move upstream. We do know that they travel over land, but this particular project, the scope was on the downstream because that is when the big mortality events happen. So we wanted to do that first to prevent and improve the mortality, and then the next step will be to be looking at upstream.
Okay,
And believe it or not, the guy that builds Archimedes screw pumps in the Netherlands also builds fish bridges. So that's a vacuum, basically a line that goes over the bank, and it's vacuum wide. It's got a vacuum in it that keeps the water that the fish can swim over land, and it's quite an amazing system. But it's designed. You can't pull one out and change the catchment. It's specifically designed for each catchment. So. I forget what the guy's name was, but I've met him several times. Gerard, yeah, quite an amazing guy. He actually was a fisherman. And now he's designing pumps. Yeah, really a heap of knowledge behind that organisation that he owns. Yeah.
Can I just comment on Peter, your comment there? So I'll take an assumption that what we've got now is chewing up the eels as they go out. So there's no difference. We're getting eels getting into the system, it's coming out. So by improving the going out, we must have it. You see what I'm saying? It's like they're now getting into the system somehow, but it's coming out. So by improving the coming out, we get a far better result. So yes, we can look at them getting in. Maybe we just get another 10% more in or 5% more in, but we're already getting a heap of them in the catchment already. Through the systems we've got now. So that's
Yeah. Thank you. Can we go?
It'd be interesting if we understand the migration if they actually are going in there, they're wanting to come out while the water levels are high. But what is actually happening for them to come back in? Is that what time is it at a low level, or is it that would be a piece of research that'd be interesting to know is when what is the circumstances when the eels are wanting to get back into the catchment?
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, it's just they don't hit. Yeah, random. Yeah, they don't.
So then if the floodgate's open at any time, they can swim back into it as long as the floodgate is below water level. That would be
So let's just show some pictures of the monitoring that we have undertaken. Eels, we have to put them to sleep to measure them. Oh, just to sleep. They wake up again. We did take a small sample to X-ray just to see if there were any internal injuries. This is the net that we install at the outlet. So we capture all the eels that pass through the pump, and then we're able to measure them and weigh them and assess their condition. This is just some calipers looking at the width of the eyes, the tagging, and yeah, we had some iwi involvement. So that just shows the results of the Archimedes and the modified McEwens. So we do some really thorough research. And it's pretty cool research. Next one, please. This is just a few pictures of a trap and transfer that we did. This is bags of eels, of tuna, that were transferred to the Waikato River. Just the nets. 350 eels captured over 2 nights from 2 pump stations. So yeah, hugely successful.
And are you the new rationalisation? Will there be a trial on that to show that the eels down there in the summertime aren't going to go through what we went through a couple of years ago, or?
They shouldn't because it's deeper on the inside. So
it should work that way.
The water temperature should be through.
And yeah, we've I've already discussed a lot of these, but these are the recommendations coming out of the strategy. So to install the fish friendly pumps, those two, McEwen's and Archimedes, during pump replacements. Yeah, over here, this one's already, you've already got gravity bypass outlets, but in the lower Waikato, not many of those pump stations have gravity bypass. Do trap and transfer, so that's something we're really keen on doing on an annual basis, both in the lower Waikato and the Hauraki. Yes, that larger Bedford pump at the Paeroa main drain, so that's what we're aiming to do this summer. A Bosman pump is another one that has come up in discussions, so yeah, that is on our radar and we'll be scoping to see if that one is another possibility. Like Lisa said, that we're going to be doing some eDNA sampling. So we don't, in some of our catchments, we don't have much information. So we don't know which fish species are present. So eDNA is a really cool tool that we've got now. So we're going to go and take some samples and try and get all of our pumps catchments. And so then we can see what fish species are present, and that can help with our prioritisation and continue to research new technologies when they arrive. I don't know a lot about the Bosman pump. That would be a Steve question. I don't know if Lisa knows anything about it. But yeah, I think it's a pump that can be used in smaller catchments. So that would just kind of add to our toolbox of pumps to give a pump for every scenario.
We have like records of eel stock or fish stock. Like, is the council keeping records at certain sites so we know whether they're increasing or decreasing?
Well, the council through our science team, there are state of the environment monitoring sites, so they would have long-term records. Yeah, we have some, I guess we don't have a long-term record for our pump catchments, but
Would it be beneficial because then we know how effective the program is if we were keeping records? Because as a child, when the river scheme came through, they had drag lines, they made big river, cleaned it all out. My grandparents came over from the Netherlands and he was catching eels, hook, line and sinker, 100-weight bags, not a problem. And then in the 70s, the eel fishing went crazy and the eel numbers dropped. And now we have carp. And if we can get the eel numbers back up, maybe we can get the carp numbers down. And that would really be beneficial, but we need to monitor at certain sites what the numbers are. And yes, I've experienced one time actual migratory eels coming up a canal, and it was unbelievable. They were like, it was like whitebaits running up the canal. Yeah, I've never seen it again.
That would be amazing to see. Yeah, so
the thing I question is, are you going around all crossings and just checking culvert pipes? So because I know of 2 or 3 where the culvert pipe drops out here into the drain down there. I still can't figure out how they're going to make the ½ metre to get back upstream.
You can answer that one, Lisa.
So the answer is yes, we do have that on our list of things to go out and check. It's part of the work that we'll be getting students to do over the summer. So progress, it's going to take us a couple of years as we go and get all those culverts.
Yeah, we have 2 students that are going to be dedicated. Are you talking about the science students? Yeah, they're dedicated for 6 months to be going out and documenting all the barriers in the region.
Fish barriers.
Yeah, fish barriers, yeah.
It's the old botulism thing where the friendly duck shooter decides to get his pond all going and you've got eels in it, then the water gets stagnant. That's it. Terminated.
Yeah. Thank you for your questions.
Is eDNA different than just ordinary DNA sampling?
eDNA is environmental DNA. So you can detect fish species, invertebrates, plants, frogs. Yeah. So you don't actually. Yes, so you're taking a water sample. Okay. Yeah. And you're passing it through a filter, and then that filter gets analysed. Yeah.
Just one of the side benefits of actually the new pumps is that they're more energy efficient.
Yes.
Aren't they?
Yeah.
Than your traditional.
Highly efficient and a long lifespan as well. I know with the Archimedes, it has a lifespan of 80 years.
And the new design of the Archimedes, they won't be if Motor Karakia gets the opportunity to put one in, they most probably won't be, fixed pumps, they'll be floating. That, the guy in Netherlands has designed a pump that the bottom bearing is floating, so it's sitting on basically its own little, wharf, barge. And it's sitting there floating that, the whole, every time the pump is working, it's working at its, best pumping capacity. It's not submerged or it's not above the water. It's actually sitting in the special spot that it can pump the most amount of water out at any given time. So there's some cool designs going into this stuff that we were unfortunately didn't know about this with when Churchill was getting designed and stoked, but he came to New Zealand and actually he fits the pumps. He's there when every single pump, one of these pumps is put in the world, and turns the switch on to make sure it's working. He says, geez, we should have done this a bit different. So that's actually going to scoping your Motor Karakia of actually having a floating pump that these things can actually move some serious water, because that's at the sweet spot every time it turns. Yeah, so there's some cool things happening. Yeah. So
a lot more energy efficient.
yeah, they are, and I don't believe we'll most probably ever be capable of doing this, but these Archimedes are actually capable of putting in reverse and actually generating energy, so they can actually become an energy source. So, but I don't know if we can actually make that work and drainage and flood protection, but they're actually they're a generator as well as a pump. So yeah, they're pretty cool. Yeah. So any other questions? Thank you for your report. It's definitely been one that we in council have heard a couple of times now, and it's definitely myself and Noel always said it's great to see that 1.2 metre eel coming through that New Zealand built pump. It's definitely something we should all be proud of that we've funded and made that happen as an organisation, and our co-funders of Tainui and others that have helped do it. It's amazing. So thank you for all your effort.
Thank you.
Thank you. So can I have a mover, please? I move. Peter, seconder, Phil. All in favour? Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Yeah. So I suppose I'll say short. Yeah, I'd just like to thank you all for turning up today. You need to, all the members need to stay on, because we're going to have the talk with the Morris Lowe about the ICM review. So we mostly have a light lunch and then get into that at 1 o'clock. So please do not leave. Staff will leave for a little while we can have we can say our feelings and how we think things are going, and they're not here to. It's offended. No, it's not offended, but we've got this time to be frank in what we want to discuss, and we there's no, and we don't want to be personal in it, and I hope there is no personal discussions on what we're going to talk about. This is about an ICM review. It's about that. So yeah, so I'd just like to thank you all for coming here today. I hope you get to Karen to mention if you want to come to the opening on Monday. I think you should all be proud of the outset, and I believe it's going to work 100% correctly. And I hope it's actually, that asset is something that we've all, well, in the future, if we don't rationalise assets, we're going to have a whole lot of assets that are all minute, small ones that we can't afford to. So the idea of this is really important, and I hope it works, because we're going to do this more in the future, not just here, but in the lower Waikato where we can make it work. So, and I love that design, that it's a wall gate, because we've been arguing for years to get multiple wall gates into our scheme, and it's one of those. It's not a culvert floodgate. So I really thank you all for the effort of getting that thing built. And it's a scheme design one, not bringing a lower Waikato design into the Waiau. So thank you. I really appreciate that. That's one thing that on the flood committees, and now in this position, that's one thing I've learned, that our Waihau Piako is unique in how it operates, that you cannot bring other systems into it because it will totally affect the way it operates. So I take staff, thank you for designing a Waihau Piako scheme gate, not a lower Waikato gate. So thanks very much for that. It's really important, but if our previous chair, Robert Hicks was here, he would be smiling from ear to ear. I imagine.
He'll be there on Monday. He'll be there on Monday.
Yeah, but he'll be smiling ear to ear that we're doing the wall gate. Yeah. So I think that's, I'm trying to explain the importance of it, the old flood protection committees, that was one thing that Roger, he was pushing so hard and fast. So yeah, I'll get Adam to do the kid care and then we can have lunch. So thanks very much for everything today, boys. Really appreciate it.
Here, my here, tapu, here, wate, here, mama, here, nako, here, tana, here, menanaro, here, ara, takatu, ora, here, here, whakarai, ake, here, tēnā, whiwe, kaiti.
Thank you. Any closed?
38. 12:38.
Thank you.
Okay,